Thank you, Modesto. Good morning, everyone. Today, on Wednesday, March 17th, happy St. Patrick's Day. We are starting our Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. I understand that the state law currently requires that the following announcement be made at the beginning of every remote public hearing as follows. Due to the current public health emergency, the City Council Committee are currently meeting remotely. We are using Microsoft Teams to make these remote hearings possible. Instructions for how the public may view and all for public testimony at public hearings of Council Committee are included in the public hearing notice that are published in the Daily News, Inquirer, and Legal Intelligencer prior to the hearings and can also be found on phillycouncil.com. I know that the hour has come. Mr. Monaco, please read the roll to take attendance. Members, if you want to say you're present and say a few words so that your picture will appear on screen. Thank you.
Councilmember Squilla.
Present.
Councilwoman Gautier. Councilwoman Brooks.
Hi, this is Councilwoman Gautier. I'm present. I'm so sorry.
Thank you very much. Councilman O.
Good morning, Chairman and colleagues. I am present.
Councilman Dom.
Good morning, Chairman, Squilla, and colleagues. Present.
Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, and good morning, colleagues, and happy St. Patrick's Day.
Councilman Green.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Happy Green Day for everyone. Also, I do have an open comment before we start today's hearing.
Noted.
Councilman Johnson. Councilmember Curtis Jones Jr. Okay, Mr. Chairman, we do have a quorum. We have 6 council members.
All right, I think we'll go through and read the resolution, and then we'll have comments from some council members. All right, so we do have a quorum, and the committee is present, and the hearing is now called to order. This is a public hearing on the Committee of Commerce and Economic Development regarding resolution number 200109. Mr. McMonagle, please read the title.
Resolution number 200109, authorizing City Council's Committee on Commerce and Economic Development to hold hearings regarding comprehensive, qualitative, and quantitative efforts to improve the ease of doing business in the city of Philadelphia.
Before we begin the hearing and testimony from witnesses we have for today, everyone who has been invited to the meeting to testify should be aware that the public hearing is being recorded. Because the hearing is public, participants and viewers have no reasonable expectation of privacy. By continuing to be in the meeting, you are consenting to being recorded. Additionally, prior to be recognized, members for questions or comments they have for witnesses, I will note for the record at this time there will be use of the chat feature available in Microsoft Teams to allow members to signify that they wish to be recognized in order to comply with the Sunshine Act. The chat feature must only be used for this purpose. All right, before we get started, I know Councilmember Green would like to have a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. About a year ago, we were planning for this hearing on finding ways to make it easier to do business with the city of Philadelphia and in the city. None of us could have ever imagined what was going to be upon us, which was the novel coronavirus, which has upended all aspects of our lives and the entire world. Flash forward a year later, this type of conversation is even more important as we try to address not only the incredible impact that the pandemic has had from a healthcare perspective, but also the devastating economic crisis caused by COVID-19. So more than ever, it's important that we as a city, working in a public-private partnership with not only the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce, but businesses of all fashions in our city, work together collectively to make it easier to do business with the city of Philadelphia and in the city of Philadelphia as we try to encourage commerce and as we try to build back better and come out of the pandemic in a way that will help us address not only the 25% poverty rate, but all the myriad of issues that we have in the city of Philadelphia. I think a successful way of growing out of poverty and reducing that poverty rate is our ability to make it easier to do business in the city of Philadelphia for not only existing companies, but also new companies that are interested in coming to the city. And we need to continue the goal of trying to both attract companies to the city of Philadelphia, but also retain companies as we, like so many cities around this nation, are competing with each other. And we need to make sure that we're doing all that we can to increase the business climate and make it easier to do business with and in the city of Philadelphia. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Council Member. Dom, did you want to be recognized?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say that I think now more than ever, this crisis, in mind, it's more efficient how the city does business with our small businesses and large businesses. Something that I learned that I think we should take the pandemic. In that sidewalk and street rebuild that many of us supported, we had a requirement by the city to give a response within 3 days. So I think going forward, putting in time frames and goals legislation is very important for accomplishing, speeding up the time frame of the city. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I turn it back to you, and thank you for having this hearing today.
Thank you. And I'm just going to say, first of all, probably going to have my screen off because it's cracked there, and I know it's distracting some people as they're watching this, but I will still be here and present. As we look through how we operate, I think it's important to realize, even after the vaccines are given and people have herd immunity, we still don't know the long-term effects of the virus. And we still don't know whether you need a booster shot or going to have different mutations and things like that. So it's very important as we go back to look at how we go back safely. This may be a long time that we're going to be dealing with this. And so we just can't wait until it's over to do something. So it's very important to hear this, to have this hearing, and to make sure we're preparing to move forward, knowing that most likely this pandemic will be going on for a year or two. Mr. McMonagle, do you want to please read the first panel?
Mr. Chairman, can we recognize?
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Jones.
Can we recognize Councilman Jones?
Yeah, I just want to be recorded as being present.
You are recorded. Noted. So noted for the record.
Okay.
Mr. McMonagle, please read the first panel.
Can we please ask Michael Rashid, the Commerce Director?
Good afternoon. Are you connected, Michael, or ready to proceed? Just state your name for the record and then start with your testimony.
I'm present, sir. Good morning, Chairperson Squilla and members of the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. My name is Michael Rashid, and I am the Director of Commerce for our great city. I'm happy to be here today to provide testimony on Resolution 200109 regarding comprehensive, qualitative, and quantitative efforts to improve the ease of doing business in the city of Philadelphia. Before I start my testimony, however, I would like to say happy St. Patrick's Day to all of my Irish brothers and sisters and friends throughout our city. As some of you know, for 18 years, I worked for an Irishman, Mr. Dan Hilferty, here in Philadelphia, a very avid Irish supporter. He took me to Ireland and had me investigate doing business for our company in Ireland. I got a chance to mingle with the Irish people and eat Irish food. And I have to say that it's an understatement when you talk about Irish food here in the United States, how delicious and quite frankly, how soulful Irish food is. Very, very, very good. And I really enjoyed myself. It caused me to want to study a little bit more about the Irish people. And one thing that I learned that I'll never forget and so many people I don't think realize this, is that there was a time in our country when Irish people were not considered white. They were considered almost Negroes. I mean, they were beat up on the street, their homes were burned, their churches were burned, and they suffered tremendous persecution. And I think that has brought to the Irish people at least some feeling of sympathy and empathy for what is going on today and what has happened today, what has happened in our country with the African American population. I also learned a quote that's an Irish proverb. It's not assigned to anybody, but it's an Irish proverb, which I think is important and pertinent for our testimony today. And that quote goes like this: "The future is not set. There is no fate but what we make for ourselves." I want to repeat, the future is not set. There is no fate but what we make for ourselves. The work that we do in the Commerce Department has never been more important than it is right now. Over the last year, as our city has grappled with COVID-19, thousands of businesses have closed, and nearly half are reporting that they will have to do the same if things don't change in the next few months. According to a 2021 Beach Enterprises Black Business Directory, about 8% of the Black businesses owned in our city are now closed. Those closures represent thousands of jobs, lost revenue, and investments in communities that have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. In addition to that, the hospitality industry, which is a major employer of Black and brown people in our city, has lost tens of thousands of employees and continue to be without tens of thousands of employees, many of whom are Black and brown. So when we talk about businesses being crippled and going out of business in our community, it's not just the business owners that we're talking about. We're talking about the employees who are predominantly in the hospitality industry, at least Black and brown citizens of our community. During the pandemic and the subsequent effects of the pandemic, it was almost like two tidal waves hit our city and our economy. First of all, there was the government-imposed shutdown of schools, daycare centers, restaurants. People were told to stay at home. Logistics was crippled. The healthcare industry was turned upside down. The construction industry was shut down for most of that period, and air travel was essentially crippled. During this time, not only did we have that seismic event happen to our economy, but then there was the unfortunate murder of George Floyd, which caused demonstrations all over our country, and especially in our city. And there were unfortunate uprisings, which caused businesses to be looted and ransacked and really hurt and put out of business, many of them, because of those kinds of things. In the midst of those double seismic tidal waves that hit our economy, the Commerce Department was called on more than I think any other department to pull together city forces and work with the various business communities to try to revitalize and restore our economy. I think that the work that we did last year is work that needs to be recognized. And I think it shows that we have the ability, not only in commerce, but the entire city, and working with our private sector, to turn our economy around and make this a great place and a continued great place to do business. Over the last year, as we have grappled with COVID, you can see what commerce has done. We have worked with our partners at PIDC to deploy business-sustaining resources in our community. All told, we injected nearly $81 million in relief funds to local businesses since last March. These programs include the Philadelphia COVID-19 Small Business Relief Fund, which distributed $13.3 million to over 2,000 small businesses. 66% of those awards went to minority-owned firms. We also invested more than $37 million in CARES funding to support Philadelphia businesses that applied to the state's grant program but were not funded. In addition, PIDC has deployed an additional $8 million in funds to cover 86 businesses through their loan programs. Excuse me. After the civil unrest last summer, the city's Restore and Reopen program provided more than $1.5 million in grants to 186 businesses, 90% of which were minority-owned businesses. Last week, we announced through our Restaurants and Gym Relief Program, 914 businesses, 50% of whom were minority-owned businesses, will receive grants of up to $14,250. And just this week, in partnership with PIDC, we launched the CHIRP program, Commonwealth Hospitality Industry Relief Program, which will infuse up to $17 million in additional relief into those hard-hit industries. I want to just make a note, even though the restaurant program and the restrictions on the restaurant program have been widely criticized, the ability that we gave to restaurants to reopen from 25% to 50% has been accepted, and almost 200 restaurants have been approved to move to that 50% level. It has been noted, and correctly noted, that only 2 of the restaurants that have been approved to go to 50% are African-American owned businesses, and I believe 2 restaurants were brown businesses that have been approved. And that is exactly the reason why, when we had these grant programs and we awarded these grants, and as I mentioned, 60% of the grants went to African-American, Black, and brown businesses. A priority in awarding these grants was to allow those businesses and to facilitate those businesses the ability to remediate their ventilation systems so that they could get to 50% occupancy capacity. So while they may not have been able to qualify right away, we expect that 60% who got the grant awards will be able to remediate their ventilation system and soon be able to come up to the capacity limits that the health department has set forth. These funds are vital. They're extremely important, but they certainly are not enough on their own. In order for businesses to generate the revenue needed to keep themselves operational in the midst of a pandemic, owners must have flexibility and they must have the cooperation from city government. I believe the best example of our work with the restaurant industry has been with the restaurant industry. In June, Philadelphia was one of the first major cities to announce an expanded outdoor dining initiative. This has enabled hundreds of restaurants across the city to earn much needed revenue by offering outdoor dining and offering it safely. We were only able to accomplish this because of the full commitment from each department in the city government: licensing and inspections, health, the Office of Transportation, infrastructure, and sustainability, revenue, law, and many others to cooperate on policy and to coordinate on process. I'm pleased to report that our work has been recognized by national planning organizations. We shared Philadelphia's model with national leaders at the North American Cities Outdoor Dining Organization. On several occasions, we have convened virtual learning sessions that brought together our counterparts in 30 other cities from across the continent. And as a result, those other cities learned about our unique citywide approach. And we were able to incorporate innovations from Edmonton in Canada, Chicago, Illinois, Washington, D.C., and others into our own program. Again, I go back to my quote, which I like very much: the future is not set. There is no future but the future that we make for ourselves. And this is what we are doing here in Philadelphia. And now we're examining which elements of our response can transform how we operate in the future. Those transformations could mean creating more public space, vitality through open air uses of the right-of-way adjustments, and many more. I'd like to highlight some of the other great work that is happening in city departments to become more responsive and more business friendly. For example, just 2 days before city properties were closed to the public due to COVID-19, L&I successfully launched online permitting on its Eclipse technology platform. COVID-19 has yet to stop L&I's permitting or licensing operation for a single day. Now businesses can file, pay for, and submit additional information and print permits online 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Incredibly, the L&I permitting operation has met pre-pandemic service level agreements for both commercial and residential plan reviews 97% of the time throughout last year. I also want to commend L&I for what was called the Report Card Project, which began in 2018 and had its highest average rating this past year. Through this annual assessment, L&I gathers feedback from key constituencies on how the department is doing and when it comes to public safety, customer service, communication, and innovation. These scores are published publicly on phila.gov and hold the department accountable for improvements and a framework for measuring success. The idea of public publishing of our performance measures is something that we're going to do more of in the Commerce Department and other departments of city government. Likewise, the Department of Revenue maintained crucial services throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, such as payment processing, tax clearance, communications, and we launched a virtual call center in May of 2020. Revenue is also currently upgrading their online tax filing and payment system, and this new system will increase efficiencies within the department, but especially improve the experience for residences and businesses when interacting with the city. Phase 1 will roll out in November of 2021. The new system will make it easier for residents and businesses to find and apply for programs when they need assistance. Additionally, the entire system and application assistance will be available in Spanish. Every day I speak to business owners throughout Philadelphia about what it's like to operate here and what we can do better to better support new and existing businesses. While it's very clear that there is still lots of work to be done, the past several years have shown us what we can accomplish when we, the administration, city council, and the private sector work together. Let's keep building upon our momentum. Despite our challenges in the coming months, I'm going to make it a priority to work with my team and my counterparts in other departments to establish a business response team that will focus on just this, being more responsive to the needs of our businesses and working to foster an environment where all aspiring entrepreneurs can succeed. Again, the future is not set, and there is no future but the future that we make for ourselves. I want to thank Councilmember Green for his continued leadership on this issue, as well as the Chamber of Commerce for their valued partnership, and all of the chambers, business associations, and business owners who have informed this work. Thank you, council members, for the opportunity to testify before you today, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Rashid. Really appreciate your inputting and guidance, and it's a breath of fresh air knowing that we as a city are looking at all these different ways to help, especially the struggling businesses here in the city of Philadelphia. We do have several questions from there. I know Councilmember Green, Jones, and then Gilmore Richardson. So Councilmember Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Rashid, for your work as a new Commerce Director. I believe this is your first hearing testifying in front of City Council. I wasn't aware that you are such a student of Irish and Gaelic culture. So thank you for providing that information and background.
Councilman, let me just, I omitted to say, I believe what may be obvious to some, I work for an Irishman today as well. I talked about Dan Hilford, but there's an Irishman I work for today as well. So you got to give credit to the boss.
Thank you for that correction of the record. But also thank you for your long history in the corporate sector, especially your work at Keystone Emergency Health Plan and then AmeriHealth Caritas. You bring boundless experience and expertise, both in healthcare and also from your work in that regard. I also have to commend the Commerce Department. Prior to your tenure, I worked very closely with the Acting Commerce Director, Sylvia Guy Howard, as well as a number of people within the Commerce Department, as well as Ann Bouvert-Nevins on a number of the programs that you talked about, especially the Small Business Grant and Loan Fund. From my understanding, that was one of the first initiatives I think in the country, and I was told by some of my colleagues that I work with in National League of Cities and Democratic municipal officials, of a city actually providing dollars to small businesses, either through a grant or loan impacted by the pandemic. And that was funded with dollars not only identified by the Commerce Department, but also through their own efforts to raise dollars from private entities, as well as through City Council's $85 million transfer ordinance that we did at the beginning of the pandemic. And so I also want to say thank you for your new initiative of, I think, the Commerce 101, providing opportunity for businesses to have direct conversations with the Commerce Department to address some of the issues that we're talking about, to allow them to navigate through some of the challenges they have in doing business in the city of Philadelphia and with the city. However, I still think there's some significant concerns that a number of people have raised historically, especially as it pertains to doing business and the prioritization of doing business in the city of Philadelphia, and the prioritization of commerce. And I say no fault to you or your predecessor or the great staff in the Commerce Department, but really a prioritization of the work of the Commerce Department within the administration. Last year during the budget crisis, and I know we did have a $750 million deficit, but to be quite frank, the Commerce Department's budget was decimated. We used CDBG CARES dollars to maintain the staff levels at the Commerce Department. But when you think of a global pandemic like COVID, which not only was a health crisis, but it was also an economic calamity for so many businesses in the city of Philadelphia, especially African-American owned businesses. When you look at the data from U.S. Census, you saw a significant drop-off of African-American owned businesses compared to white businesses, 68% drop-off compared to 44% drop-off for white-owned businesses. So my concern as we go into this new budget season with the mayor's budget address on April 15th, really want to get a perspective of how Commerce will be at the table in reference to dollars being allocated to the Commerce Department. I know we do have a $450 million deficit, and we will be receiving 2 tranches of dollars from the American Rescue Plan, one within less than 60 days. That will go a long way in helping us to address our budget deficit, $450 million, and then another tranche next year. But my concern is the prioritization of the Commerce Department in those dollars for economic development activity for businesses, and also how we bring back a number of industries in our city. I look at what has happened in other jurisdictions, in particular Baltimore, and I've said this anecdote quite a bit, that during last fall, during a Monday Night Football game, there was advertisements into Philadelphia from Baltimore and their tourism industry talking about come to Baltimore to spend their dollars. Recently, I did a tour of SEPTA, and we're looking at some of the challenges that SEPTA is having. And there was once again advertisements in the city of Philadelphia at the newly renovated Fifth and Market station saying come to Baltimore. So I want to get a sense from your perspective. I know the budget has not been completed yet, but I want to get some sense of how the work of your department will be prioritized within this administration, because yes, the pandemic has been a health calamity, but has also been a very significant economic crisis, and we need to make sure we are prioritizing the resources that we can to help businesses come back and help industries come back from this pandemic, because we're competing not just against Chester or Bucks or Delaware or Montgomery County, but clearly we're competing against Baltimore, Boston, St. Louis, Richmond, D.C., New York, and cities around this nation, and how we come back from this economic crisis.
So thank you, Councilman, and those I absolutely agree with your comments there. We have set forth 4 major priorities for the Commerce Department. We have been discussing those priorities with the administration, And I think the administration is 100% behind us. Appreciate the support that we've gotten from the mayor's office, from the budget office, from every department we talk to, and especially our cross departments where we have to be able to work as a unit to try to solve the problems. First on our list, and that's why I really appreciate the resolution that's being put forth in this hearing. First on our list is we have to be able to do a better job responding to our businesses and their needs, whether it's a new business, an immigrant just coming to town, coming to 52nd Street and starting a business and can't hardly speak the language and wants to know what has to happen, and he or she is tied up because they don't know the rules of Philadelphia, or it's a major corporation like Amazon trying to get into the city of Philadelphia and to do business with us, or what just happened recently, company not as big as Amazon, but a company like Cash App, which is a major company, which I think we were successful in getting that company to make a commitment to come here and to hire 450 new jobs here in the city of Philadelphia. So business response is a huge priority of ours. I try to explain some of the things that we have done in spite of the COVID pandemic. We have been working very closely, in the last month or so, actually 2 months, with the restaurant industry, trying to make things better for them, doing everything that we can for them and also their employees. We're engaged now with BOMA, the Business Office and Managers Association. We think that we're getting to the finish line with them, and also with the hotels. We hope that we're getting to the finish line with them, but just being able to respond to businesses. In 2018, we had a proposal to create what's called a business response unit in the Commerce Department that a prospective business owner could just call, and there'd be one number they would call, and one person would be assigned to them. And this person could walk across all 47 departments of the Philadelphia government and fix whatever they needed for them. And they would be able to the business owner would be able to look into a portal and see where we were in that process at any point in time. Where is their application for a permit? Where is their application for a license, et cetera, et cetera. That was put together in 2018. It was put on the back burner because of the pandemic. It is a number one priority in our budget submission this year to be able to restart the business response team, because it will mean so much to us. In addition, I'll say, when I was at AmeriHealth, when I got to AmeriHealth, we had 400 employees, and we were in 3 states. When I left AmeriHealth under Dan Hilferty's leadership, 14 years later, we had 6,000 employees, and we were in 16 states. And we accomplished that growth, and we were able to attract states to bring jobs into the city of Philadelphia, not because we waited for those states to say, okay, we want to come to Philadelphia, or we have a competition between Philadelphia and Baltimore or whatever. We got to those states long before the decision to make a move got to the C-suite. We had people going out to those states long before, spanning out to those states and selling AmeriHealth to those states before they even thought they needed AmeriHealth. We were selling. And I think this is what we have to do a lot more. Other cities do a lot more of that. You talked about Baltimore. Just selling before a company really has made a decision, haven't even thought about making a decision. And so this is the kind of thing that I think that we need to do. It takes resources. We hope that the stimulus money will help us out. We hope that the budget will help us out. But we know that, I'm sure that, I don't know an exact number, but for every dollar we invest in trying to attract business, the ROI is going to be a multiple of those dollars. And so business attraction is extremely important for us. Working on the commercial corridors is I think the most important thing that we do. There are studies out. It's interesting. Here's a study that I just saw last week that was prepared by the Center City District, Paul Levy and his folks at the Center City District. And this study shows that the most direct connection in a city like Philadelphia between something that we can do and growth is not necessarily taxes. It's not necessarily what's going on in the subway system, but the most direct connection between doing something and growth is equity. Is equity in terms of business opportunity, especially for Black and brown businesses. That is the most direct connection between something that we can do and growth. And so That's why we want to spend even more of our efforts in trying to build equity opportunities for Black and brown business people. That's what these grants have been all about. And as we go to the federal government and try to prioritize stimulus money, I think you're going to see that is going to be a huge priority of ours, is to try to create more and more opportunities for Black and brown businesses who will hire Black and brown people. The Black and brown businesses are the biggest opportunity for Black and brown people to get jobs, but there has to be more Black and brown businesses to be able to hire those people. So that's I would call it our second opportunity. Our third area of priority. The fourth priority is obviously jobs, and there's a department in the Commerce Department which works on workforce, and we have to do a lot better job. We have to do much better as a society and as a city in terms of creating more and more jobs in our city. And the last one is obviously the OEO, Office of Economic Opportunity. The city has a goal of 35% minority participation in economic opportunity. We fell down this past year. We went from 35% to 30%. We have some ambitious plans, not only to get our own departments, and the mayor is the champion. He's the champion, and there is not a day that passes that I don't hear our mayor talking about, well, are we making opportunities for minority vendors? What are we doing to try to get our minority vendors into the swing of our economy? But it's not just city contracting, but it's the much larger private sector contracting. And we're working with Rob Wonderling and all of our Chamber of Commerce to try to improve private contracting as well for our people. So those are our four priorities.
Well, Mr. Rashid, thank you for that perspective. I know you, Karen Fegley, Von Boy, all the staff at the Commerce Department are committed to those goals. When you talk about equity, when you think about the city of Philadelphia having a 25% poverty rate, and the African-American population is about 44%, but African-Americans only own 6% of the businesses that have employees. If you look at the Hispanic population in the city of Philadelphia, it's about 15%. But our Latin brothers and sisters only own 4% of the businesses with employees in the city of Philadelphia. We're not going to be able to grow out of poverty unless we grow businesses, especially in those communities. So I know you are committed to that issue, but I hope to see that same level of commitment by the entire administration, especially reflected in the budget, because a budget is a political document and also demonstrates your priorities, and seeing how dollars are allocated will be a true indication of the commitment, not of the Commerce Department, because the Commerce Department, I believe, has been committed and continue to be committed there, but of the administration, especially the mayor's office. So we will see in the April 15th budget address that level of commitment, and I'll be pushing for that level of commitment because I have not seen it in the past. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for bringing this needed hearing to the public space. First, let me thank you both, Ms. Harrison and also Mr. Rashid. This is your first time testifying before council, and both of you come from a private sector background and ran away and joined the public kind of service space, so a nonprofit space. So thank you for your commitment. A continued gratitude to you, Director Rashid, for, I think it might have been in your first weeks, taking a tour of Main Street in Manioc with us, along with the Health Department, L&I, and your business assistance team, to look at the uncertainty, predictability of how we would deal with outdoor dining. And some of that information was taken back and was helpful to other commercial corridors and other small businesses around the city. So thank you for jumping in head first, if you would, in doing it. And I join you in saying Happy St. Patrick's Day, and your eloquent quote so I want to give a quote of my own. When Main Street America catches a cold, the African American community catches pneumonia. I can't remember who to attribute that to, but it has been true throughout. What I want to know is, and I'm again grateful to PIDC, the Chamber of Commerce, the Commerce Department for their quick response to not only the pandemic, but in response to some of the protests, some of the rioting that took place not only in Center City, but in commercial corridors around the city. So to that end, are you prepared to talk about the programs that I know as a board member of PIDC and working with Commerce and the Chamber have been targeted? And I think there's some good news there about your ability and your partnerships to penetrate that particular vulnerable Black and brown community. And I'm sure Ms. Harrison is going to have some input on that. Can you speak to that?
Yes, Councilman, and let me just take a moment and introduce my staff who is here with us, and I'm going to ask a couple of them to comment on some of the great work that we have been doing with PIDC. First of all, there's my new Chief of Staff, which is Sarah Stelz. Sarah comes to us she's former Executive Director of the West Philadelphia Skills Initiative, and I think her presence points to the high priority that we're going to place on jobs and job training, especially to try to build up folks in the Black and brown communities. There's also Karen Fagley, who works with the neighborhood business services that we provide, and Libby Peters is here with us, who works very closely with PIDC and our data capabilities. Let me ask Karen and Libby if they would to address your question with respect to PIDC. Karen, you want to go first? Or Libby?
Sorry.
Yeah, Karen. Fine. Karen.
No, I'm sorry. I was having trouble getting on. Hi, Karen Fegley, Deputy Commerce Director.
Her presence points to the high priority that we're going to place on jobs and jobs.
I think somebody needs to mute. We have been, working closely with PIDC and with all of our partners on making sure that we could, make all of our grants and relief programs as accessible as possible. We are, we always need to do more. So we're always working for continuous improvement, but we're pretty pleased that we feel like we have been intentional and it has paid off, with some of the results we've gotten. I am scrambling Councilman, to pull up the data in front of me. So I don't know, Libby, if you have that ready to go and can read off some of the stats, but.
Sure.
Thanks.
Councilman Jones, were you interested in the most recent RGRP program?
Well, I think in concert with the spirit of the hearing, how did you redirect programs to minority small businesses, female small businesses, as a result of COVID, but as a result of some of the impacts of closures due to looting?
Got it. Yeah. I mean, I'll start, Karen, if that's all right, with Restored Reopen, which was the, second iteration of a relief program that we did. And this was in the wake of George Floyd's murder. And we partnered very closely with community-based organizations on this program. So we really took the learnings that we had from the Small Business Relief Fund, where we reached a really large amount of businesses, 2,000 businesses, 66% of which were minority owned. But we still had things that we learned from there, right? We learned that maybe there's ways to shorten the application process. Maybe there's ways to better use community-based organizations that are on the ground to help with communications and application assistance. And really just trying to figure out ways to make the program as accessible as possible, whether that was like breaking down language barriers or building trust with minority entrepreneurs who, where we really needed to be on the streets and talking to the community-based organizations. And with that program, we reached 91% minority-owned businesses, 75% of which were immigrant-owned. That is a bit of a reflection, unfortunately, of who was hurt during the civil unrest. It was a lot of our businesses on 52nd Street, 22nd and Lehigh, Broad, Germantown, and Erie. But I think that's an example of us really taking what we learned, applying it to the next program. And I think we've continued to do that with each program.
So you guys are modest, and I'm going to brag for you. Every PIDC meeting I attend, every exchange we have as a collective, I'm hearing unprecedented numbers of penetration into communities outside of Center City and into Black and brown businesses. And I'm thankful as a council member who represents 52nd and Jefferson, which was hard hit, and areas throughout my district. And my staffer, Josh Cohen, literally coordinated and shepherded a lot of the applications from my district to you guys. And what I appreciate was the yeses came quick, but the no's came quicker. Why? Because if that wasn't going to be an option for some of my small businesses, they needed to know that. So I'm grateful. If you're modest, that's fine. I've never been accused of that. So I'm going to thank you publicly for that. I'm going to then switch to a line of questioning Member Green talked about. And historically, CDBG funding, only 7% of CDBG funding goes towards economic development. Now, for my good friend, Rob Wonderling, he's going to appreciate this. How can we increase that number? How can we either increase the percentage or grow the pie? Has any thought been given to that, Director?
Yes, we are working not only with Rob Wonderling, but with other folks around the city, private business and government people in the city government, and putting together a comprehensive plan to reach out to the federal government with respect to CDBG funding. Council will hear about that plan in a few weeks.
Great. And finally, what we discovered in some of the responses and the programs related to getting folks back open is that there was a great need for technical assistance for small businesses. And some of them, even though they were even successful, did not have the best record keeping, the best ability to respond to applications. How are we addressing that going forward?
So I'm going to ask Karen and Libby to comment on it, but from my perspective, I'm really excited about the network of local organizations that we partner with, whether they are CDCs like the Enterprise Center or the CDFI network around the city. Many great organizations like West Philadelphia Financial Services, which I believe is in your district, or Councilman Gaudier's district.
No, it's in my district.
I'm sorry. Which is in your district, but many other organizations like that. It's a tremendous network, and we meet with them all the time, as well as the business improvement districts, who we fund in each one of these organizations. Some, not all of them, but there is funding that we are able to supply to each one of those organizations to bring technical assistance to businesses in their quarters. You know, everything is local, Councilman. I don't have to tell you that. Everything is local. Everything is about relationships. And having some so-called expert coming from city council, from the Commerce Department or city government is not the same as having an expert that you know who's right there in your neighborhood. So we contract with these folks to help people get their books together, to get their management structure together, to get whatever it takes to be able to present and pitch their services to others. In addition to that, we do contract with experts. We contract with CPA firms. We contract with management consulting firms, and we need to do more of that. And that's going to be, if I have anything to do with it, that's going to be a major effort that we're going to try to support, because again, relationships are everything. Local being local is extremely important because you can respond to things that we would just never know about if you're local. So that's really important. When we met with the CDI network about 3 weeks ago, we asked them. They were saying what you were saying, and we asked them to give us a proposal. And so they're going to give us a proposal hopefully soon as an entire network for how they can help and partner with Commerce and the city of Philadelphia to spur economic development in their areas.
So I noticed that Ms. Fagley laughed when the word expert and then city council.
That was a slip. That was a slip, Council.
Right, okay. I just want you to know, Karen, I did see it. All right. Two quick things and then I'm out. And I will pass the mic to my colleagues. One, another observation in retrospect was the levels of insurance or lack thereof that small businesses had. For some businesses that were fully insured, some of the closures and some of the even looting was a clearance sale, and they were able to restock, reopen quickly. For others, it was a fatal blow, and on those corridors, you see vacant stores that will probably never open with the same ownership again. How can we work with the state to look at different products offered small businesses in Philadelphia that deal with issues like high risk, pandemic, and even closures due to unforeseen looting? And how can we work to at least discuss these issues?
Now, I don't know if we are doing any of that, Karen or Libby, are we? But I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, that's not something we've really tackled as the director and councilman, you've said, like, so all this other stuff we were very aware of, the need for better taxes and bookkeeping and all of that. We were aware that there were probably, people didn't have the right insurance, but we haven't had to deal with it in this way until this year. And so, that is a great idea. It's something we can look into with some of our partners and maybe lobby at the state.
So the last one is, when we started seeing signs that there was going to be civil unrest, when unfortunately something happened either nationally or locally, we began to get the buzz that there was going to be a problem that night. And one of the things, thanks to the Commerce Department, Nazra Sabri worked with my staff, Josh Cohen, to alert business associations, mall managers, that they needed to be aware of the possibility of problems and work with local police, private security to do so. I'd like to encourage that Amber Alert style communications going forward. Any thoughts on that?
Well, Councilman, I have to say that as a newbie here, the tour that I took with you on West 54th Street was a real eye-opener for me in terms of the role that we can play, because we do have neighborhood business services representatives under NAS's leadership. We do have those people spread out into commercial quarters around the city. We don't have enough because there's way more commercial quarters than we have people. But just seeing that commercial quarter that you took me to, and the potential role of a person from Commerce that's there not only to support that business, but also to support L&I, the police department, the health department, and everybody else that's trying to help rebuild and save our commercial quarters from further decline. Because lots of our commercial quarters are at a point, sort of a tipping point. If they continue to decline, they're going to die. If we can stop them from declining now, hopefully there can be some life re-injected into those quarters. And I see Commerce as a really important element in trying to bring all city departments together to help the communities in those commercial quarters rebound. So we really want to try to continue to do more of that.
Yeah, and I'll just add. I'm sorry, Councilman. No, I just want to confirm for you that you're right. That's one of the sort of the good things that came out of this really the really hard year is that connection with emergency management and with the police department and with all the contacts and network that Commerce has built up over the years. So that will continue. I can assure you that we're going to continue that communication and getting the word out when hopefully we knock on wood, hopefully we don't have to use it for a while. But yeah, when any type of emergency happens, we'll continue to use that network.
Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Gilmore Richardson.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much, Mr. Rashid. And I wanted to also personally thank you for coming out to the North 54th Street corridor with my district Councilmember Curtis Jones Jr., so that you could see some of the challenges that we are facing on the commercial corridor in Winfield, which is very similar to the challenges that a number of business corridors are facing in neighborhoods across our city. So I really wanted to thank you, Nazareth Sabri, and your entire team for coming out and really seeing the challenges on the ground. And like my colleague, Councilmember Green, I must commend our Commerce Department and our former acting director, Sylvie Gaye Howard, but also Heloise and Zakia and all the other members of your department who have been working in the arena of workforce development. I was very concerned last year when the workforce development department was eliminated, and was very concerned that we have some type of workforce development unit within the Commerce Department to really help us work through the challenges that we know would be in front of us as a result of COVID-19. So I would like to start my line of questioning there around workforce development and how you all are working with the business community and others, prioritizing workforce development as an opportunity for us, not only to support the business community, but to support Philadelphians in their need to reskill and upskill as a result of potential job loss with the pandemic. But also as an opportunity for our young people who can move into various pathways and pipelines to job opportunities. And then also wanted to ask along that vein around workforce development, how you all are analyzing and looking at the labor market indicators as a tool to figure out how you invest in business, because we know we do a lot of investment with small businesses, but I'm very concerned about the middle market businesses and the smaller ones that need to kind of grow their capacity as well. So I know that was a lot in one question, but I wanted to start with that.
Right. Okay. So jobs obviously is extremely important. And let me ask Sarah, can you come on and, because you're our expert on that. Can you unmute yourself, Sarah, and address that question? Can we come back, because Sarah can speak a lot more eloquently on that than I can.
Sure.
You can come back to her on that one.
Sure. And thank you again. And I also see Karen there. I have to thank Karen for all of your work and for all that you do to really assist us in assisting other businesses. But in that vein, I wanted to talk about how Commerce is working with the school district, again, on those labor market indicators to help them with their curriculum realignment around the business opportunities we're seeing for Philadelphia, particularly post-pandemic. So that's the second part of that question. And then I wanted to go to the business accelerator teams and just figure out where you all are currently with those teams and, have they started to work yet and sort of what's the status update there?
Okay, let's take the last one first. So, Karen, can you talk about the accelerator teams?
I'm sorry, I was trying to get Sarah unmuted. The business acceleration?
Yeah.
Yes. So this is something we've been planning for, to have more, sort of interdepartmental response to improve the experience of any business, whether it's, somebody getting started or an existing business that's having an issue. And so the originally in FY21, we had planned for $500,000 launch of an interdepartmental team focused on process improvement and a case management system but due to budget crisis, that funding was not available. However, another one of the benefits of the crisis is everyone coming together. And so the way folks came together from all the departments around outdoor dining has really laid some great groundwork for us to continue this. Justine Volkus is our senior director on this issue, and will continue to lead the interdepartmental coordination. We have requested some funds in the FY22 budget to get it launched. We're hoping that if we're able to do that, we'll be able to step up sort of case management, interdepartmental coordination, and some technology needs that we have so that we can all work better together. We understand that this is a business issue, so it's a city issue, it's a revenue issue, but it's also very much an equity issue. Really large businesses with whole teams of folks have the time and the deep pockets to maybe navigate some challenging obstacles. If you're a small business and just trying to get your storefront open, you need to be open as soon as you start paying rent so that you're bringing that revenue in. And so this is definitely a top priority for us.
Okay, and I just want to.
I just want to say, Councilwoman Sarah was trying to come on, but she was muted. I guess, Frank, if you can unmute Sarah Stelz.
I think she might have to. This is Councilmember School. I think she might have to log off and log back in.
Okay.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Sorry.
No problem. I've transferred to my phone. Nice to see
There you
everyone
go.
this morning. Making it work, yes. And I have been in the Commerce Department for about a month. But as Mike said earlier, I do have a background in workforce development, so I appreciate the question. If I remember the questions in order, I might work from the back. So talking about labor market information, I would say two things about what we're seeing in the labor market. And the first thing is what we're seeing in almost every area as a result of this pandemic is that the most impacted communities are those communities that already had the least amount of access to begin with. So I think that any strategy that we pursue needs to keep that in mind. And labor market data indicates that we have some really exciting opportunities here in the city of Philadelphia. We have exciting opportunities in logistics, in e-commerce. We also have the same in life sciences, particularly in cell and gene therapy. So I think it's a two-pronged approach that has us investing, doubling down in areas where there are middle wage job opportunities. And then also there is a really dire need to make sure that those positions are filled with Philadelphians who are here now. And the building of the workforce system to connect folks intentionally to those investments in logistics, in life sciences, in healthcare. I think that is the role of the workforce development and adult education and training system that we have here in our city. So I think we have data to show us where to go next. And as a result of kind of the size of our department and the partnerships that we have with PWI, Philadelphia Works, and with PIDC, I think that we are charting that course right now. And I've already seen that collaboration in the few weeks that I've been here.
Sure, and I want to thank you for that response, particularly how you zeroed in on the life science industry, the logistics industry, the cell and gene therapy, immunotherapies industry, because I was specifically thinking about that, including the shipyard. And here's the challenge that I'm thinking about. How are we actually making the connection so that the 4 CTE schools and the 130 CTE programs that we have align with those opportunities? For me, I feel like we're not connecting all the dots. And this is not on commerce, right? Because, this is about the coordination of effort to ensure that, what we need to take place in the meantime, in between time, to make the connection actually happens. So, we know that we have these opportunities, particularly, at the Navy Yard, with the Hillco site, and lots of other sites across our city where we know there are no programs that exist for our young people. There's no upskilling programs that exist on a wholesale basis to really get them connected. So that's what I really want to focus on around workforce development and encourage you all. And I would like to be a part of this conversation to work with the school district, PIDC, the district council members, and others when we see large-scale opportunities to ensure that immediately we have the connection to realign the curriculum opportunities so that we can feed Philadelphians into these jobs, because it's not going to happen by happenstance. It won't happen because we've all had a conversation. We have to map it out, put it down on paper to ensure that it's actually taking place. I appreciate you bringing that up because it was right on task and on target with the industries that I was specifically thinking about. And I want to be very involved with that and ensuring that we make that happen. I had already introduced a resolution on curriculum realignment, and I appreciate all the support from Commerce, but I want to continue to think about how we work through those challenges.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to work with you on that.
Okay, that'll be excellent. And the other thing I wanted to circle back to was how you all in Commerce are prioritizing your investment in the workforce development unit within Commerce.
Sarah, you want to take that? No, you're on mute again. There you go.
Sure. Well, I think that the area of commerce, workforce development, now has learned how to do more with less. I think that is obvious, and I think that they're continuing to put out really high quality work in a couple of areas. I think that the first thing that they're doing is sort of piloting initiatives like the Fair Chance Hiring Initiative, like the Achievers Initiative, which is focused on high school equivalency. These are programs that they've stood up with the resources that they have available and that have the opportunity to expand more broadly citywide if we can prove their effectiveness. So I think that is one function that area is fulfilling right now. I also believe that the partnership with Philadelphia Works couldn't be more important. Philadelphia Works has capacity right now, and I think that we are working with them closely to make sure that this strategy is in place where everyone has a clear role and is maximizing the resources and the staff that they have available. So I know that workforce is obviously a priority for Michael, the administration, for me. So I think the most important thing we can do right now is to find a lot of role clarity and make sure that everybody's going to play into their strengths. So I see more coming out on that over the next few weeks, particularly as it's related to some of the earmarks and other opportunities that may come down from the federal government. I think we can approach that collectively and really solidify that partnership to produce results.
Sure. And looking at the American Rescue Plan, initially, you can see a large investment, not only in workforce development, in career and technical education programs. And I think, you're correct that we need to capitalize on this opportunity and ensure that we are doing all that we can, again, to connect the dots. The other thing I wanted to bring up is just thank the workforce development professionals in Commerce for continuing to keep together the WPA, the alliance of all the workforce development professionals in the city. I think having the opportunity to continue to have those conversations and interface with Commerce has been helpful for them throughout the pandemic, and I just am hopeful that we can continue to have those conversations. Lastly, I was struck by an article that I read recently, and I forget which news outlet this was, where it stated that fewer Black-owned businesses closed during the pandemic than they initially projected due to additional direct financial support and, assistance with social awareness. And I remember early on in the pandemic being on a call with Nazareth Sabri around a search engine optimization for businesses, and that was held by the Commerce Department, and just an overall concerted effort around reaching businesses and really helping them with a variety of services and support, particularly from the city level, but some of the other programs that were available as well. So I think for us, it really underscores and it highlights that if you put a real dedicated effort around investing in businesses can be successful. But I was also very struck by a recent Center City District report that talked about Philadelphia being a city that spends significantly less than our peer cities on local programs and investments to promote minority businesses. I wanted to talk about that and kind of walk through that process with Commerce a bit, and ask if you all could provide some programs that, you feel we must invest in around resources and funding to better support and increase our support for minority businesses, and talk about what other programs in other major cities have proven to be successful that we should consider implementing here in Philadelphia. And I want to be, very clear, because we were on a call with one of the Black business organizations that was put together by my colleagues, Councilmember Green and Johnson, wherein, it's very hard for us to get lost in the minority conversation. But in Philadelphia specifically, we have a major issue with Black businesses. So how are we really honing in on the Black business community?
Councilwoman, I'm excited about just about everything you said a few minutes ago. First of all, let me just say on workforce, your interest and knowledge of it is very impressive, and we would love to continue to have conversations with you around workforce. Well, we think we put some innovative ideas in our budget submission this year around workforce, and we'd love to have you involved as we continue to talk about that. The article that you mentioned about fewer Black businesses suffering than expected, we have put in the chat. So if anybody would like to see that, I believe it's in the chat now. I think that article just points to something that some of us already know, and that Black people have had to do more with less forever since we've been in America, and I think that's showing with the Black businesses that were studied in this in this study, and I could talk about that for a long time. The last point you made, I've forgotten, but I want to talk about that too. What was that? What was the last point?
Focusing in on Black businesses specifically.
You talked about the article from Center City District about.
Yes.
We read that article with great interest. We were disturbed by that article. We've done a little bit of research on that article, and some of the data was not exactly apples to apples. We'd be happy to talk to you offline about some of the data that they presented in that article. I don't want to necessarily go into it now, but it wasn't necessarily apples.
Okay, I understand, but I think the more important question is, how are we investing that's different than our other peer cities from a commerce perspective in our business community? Because I think from a quantity amount, the amount of investment is smaller than our other peer cities. And I think that's the larger story.
That's true. We need to do more. I mean, it's as simple as that. We need to do more. Before I came on board, I did some research and talked to some folks in Atlanta. I'm very excited about what I've seen in Atlanta, especially the cooperation between city government and the private sector. And I've talked to Rob Wonderling. I think he's on the line today. Talked to Rob Wonderling about that, and we absolutely want to. We can't do this by ourselves. I mean, the city government is a minutia compared to the private sector in our economy. And there's now more than ever, there's a lot of goodwill on the part of the private sector to cooperate with us and to help build Black and brown businesses. And so we got to take advantage of that. And I'd like to see us take the lead in doing that.
Sure. And I have to agree with you there. And I'll end it at this because we can talk about this all day, particularly from a workforce development perspective and supporting our business community. But are you all working in tandem with the Chamber of Commerce on their new initiative around workforce development and really connecting 5,000 Philadelphians to jobs? Because I do think that is one of the most important initiatives that's happening in our city relative to connecting individuals with training opportunities and real employment. So I just want to make sure that level of cooperation is there for the program. And then also, you mentioned Atlanta, so I have to go there. That goes back to the Maynard Jackson days. And I know my colleague, Councilmember Green, always talks about former Mayor Maynard Jackson, but he had a dogged determination to ensure that anyone that was doing business with the city had to work with and support, African-American business owners. And as a result, they have created hundreds of thousands of millionaires in the city of Atlanta. So you talked about cooperation between city government and the private sector, but I think it's important that we also have a certain level of I don't want to say agreement, but we need to have a certain level of coordination also with the mayor's office, because that came directly from Maynard Jackson's office, that he ensured that if there was a large project happening, when the airport project happened in Atlanta, if you did not partner with minority-owned businesses, you could not work on that project. So I wanted to talk about how we are ensuring that every single department understands the importance of looking at contracting in a different way. And I know that my team, we're working on communication directly for the mayor's office and for all city departments prior to budget, so that we can discuss the answers and not the questions at the hearings coming up after April 15th. But I think that's an important part of what we need to do here in Philadelphia.
Agree 100%. 100%.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Right. Yes.
This Councilman Johnson, just want to acknowledge that I'm here for the record.
Okay, for the record, noted Councilman Johnson is present. We have Councilmember Dom.
Thank you, Chairman Squilla, and thank you for your testimony, Director Rashid, and thanks for your work and your team for all their work. I have some questions. I want to cover two things, and due to the time constraints, feel free to answer them as concise as possible, like a lightning round almost. I think we're dealing with two issues, and one is the virus, and then the second is going forward after the virus. And I'm not going to address the issues my colleagues addressed. I am in 110% support of all their issues. We need to do more in the Black and brown communities, and we need to in almost every category. And I think we've talked about this, but of the 5 cities surveyed on the East Coast, we're in the lowest formation of Black and brown businesses. We're in the lowest formation of Asian, Hispanic, and white, all of them. So we have a structural problem. But dealing with the virus is dealing really with demand and what's happening with our businesses. Can you tell me, from a tax standpoint, we have a $450 million deficit in our budget. How much of that $450 million, to your knowledge, is due to taxes that we've lost, and how much of that is due to expenses that have been increased?
Is that the question, Councilman?
That's one of them, yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I cannot answer that. I can get an answer for you.
Okay. Did anyone else on the team have that answer?
I don't, but we can talk with our revenue department and get you that answer.
Okay. I'm asking that question because my concern is I look at demand and I see two big factors of demand. These office buildings that are sitting vacant, some of them are at 80 or 90% vacancy, where we have 41 to 42% of the employees in those buildings who live in the suburbs and haven't been in the city for 40 hours a week for the last year, not spending money, not going out, not contributing to our tax base. And then we have colleges where we've lost a ton of students that have hurt our economy. And the best way for us to spring back is to bring back the demand. So I know you mentioned you're working with BOMA. I know that's great, and hopefully we can get these office buildings opened up and get that demand back. And I want to speak to this issue because I think it's important that we understand this. Harold Epps, when he was Commerce Director, told me that he did an analysis that 55 to almost 60% of the city's tax revenue was generated in a 10-block radius from 18th and Walnut. 10 blocks in every direction, 55 to 60%. And I said, wow, that's kind of amazing. I said, it's important that we continue that so we have the money that we generate from that section to spend across the city. So I'm very aware that demand is important, because when you walk through these areas right now, It's almost like a ghost town on Market Street in JFK. There's no one there, no one. So whatever we can do to bring back that demand, we need to bring back. And let me mention, I had a couple of questions I do want to ask you about technology, and then I want to talk about the future. We recently upgraded the technology being used by OPA to help them assess properties more efficiently. And the new platform has transformed the department's internal processes. Transitioning it to the new platform seems to have caused some problems between OPA and other departments that Philadelphia businesses have no choice but to rely on. We have some specific examples where we've tried to help people developing properties with a subdivided lot. They're being told that technology problems mean they have to wait 2 to 4 months for that subdivision and assessment to go through. So now they can't sell the property. We can't get our transfer taxes. And the buyer can't buy the property. And it's literally holding up a real estate transfer. And we've heard this problem more than once. How does Commerce work with these departments to help them fix these issues and better serve our businesses and residents?
Well, we consider that our job. Personally, I have not heard that issue. I don't know if Libby or Karen have heard that particular issue, but we definitely see that as our job.
We do have Sarah Adamo from L&I here. If I'm not sure if Sarah's still on with us, but are you there, Sarah?
I am here. I'm very sorry I had to step away because the water department just showed up at my door. So I'm sorry that I missed the question.
The question has to do with OPA and some of the issues we're having in getting the technology issues resolved and causing sellers and buyers to have to wait 2 to 4 months for the subdivision and assessments to go through, which are holding up closings. People can't sell their homes, people can't buy their homes, and we're not collecting transfer tax.
Yeah. Sarah, you're on too. And I'm sorry, I thought the question had a little more to do with permits and licenses. This might not be you, Sarah.
Yeah. Do you want to speak, Sarah?
Well, I was just going to say the subdivision process has changed slightly through Eclipse. It actually is a bit more streamlined than it was before. Under our old process, there was a lot of back and forth between OPA, L&I, recording the deed. And now it is a bit more streamlined. I haven't heard of any issues specifically related to OPA, but we can certainly look into it and make sure, any issues that are out there get resolved as soon as possible.
We have several of them, so we'll be happy to get them resolved. Let me go to the next question. Our next large-scale technology transition is already in the pipeline, with finance and revenue looking to replace some of their systems that are very antiquated. The implementation of One Philly and CAMA have been rough, to put it lightly. How can we get in front of this transition to anticipate service delivery issues before they happen and resolve them more quickly when they do happen?
I'll have to look into that one for you too.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm just concerned because I even had a resolution on the problems with One Philly, where people were getting paid that shouldn't have gotten paid. I just want our technology implementation to go smoothly and not have these issues.
Okay.
Another question for you. What kind of investment does the Office of Business Development make in attracting businesses from elsewhere to Philadelphia? And of the companies we've been able to attract to Philadelphia, how many have been located outside the Keystone Opportunity Zones? And what kind of return do we get on our business attraction investment?
That's a number that is on my desk, but I don't have that number in front of me, but I can get that number for you. I can get that number for you, to give you a short answer.
That'd be great. Let me ask you an overview question. My office did a lot of research on this, and I'm curious as to how we can fix this problem. The state income tax and our corporate taxes, BERT taxes in Philadelphia have created this issue. Of the top 30, 40 cities we surveyed, the top corporate income taxes come out of New York City, 17.1%. When you put a business there, you expand the business, you're at 17.1. In Philadelphia, you're at 16.3. Every other city is below 10. I'd like to know if you're a business and you're looking to expand in Philadelphia, with that backdrop? Or are you looking to come here with that backdrop? What motivates you to come here with those kind of tax burdens? And I bring this up because I think this is one of our biggest issues we need to address if we want to expand our economic tax-paying base. And now could be a great opportunity for us to not just spend this money we're getting from the federal government, but to invest it wisely to address some of these issues.
Councilman, it's going to be hard for me to give you a succinct answer to that one because I have some strong feelings on that. But I can tell you that at the city government level and in the budget department and other departments have been looking in the midst of the pandemic at ways that we can make our taxes less, reduce taxes, and make our tax system more business friendly. I cannot tell you because I don't know what decisions have been made or what will be proposed in the next few months on taxes, but I know that we're just as concerned as you are around what's perceived as a complicated tax structure. And again, I'd be happy to talk to you offline about some feelings I have about that.
Yeah, that'd be great. But this tax structure makes your jobs, I see you and I see your team, very difficult. Very difficult. I mean,
yes.
We're strangling you guys. I mean, it's not right. We need to address this so we can help existing businesses and new ones come here. Otherwise, your hands are pretty much. I don't know how you bring businesses here with that kind of structure. I really give you guys a lot of credit because it's very difficult in that backdrop.
Again, you asked me to be succinct, so I'm going to try. But I will say this: in spite of many obstacles that we have, and we have a lot of improvement to do, Philadelphia is a great city, and it has some great things that are very attractive to business. And I'm telling you from what I have heard business people say. And again, happy to talk to you offline about that. But we're sitting here on a gold mine in terms of business attraction. We just have to do some relatively small things. Taxes, probably one of them, and we're really going to take off.
I agree with you, except when they did the survey of the 5 cities, we were at the bottom of business attraction and startup. For every Black, brown, Hispanic, Asian, white, every one of them were at the bottom. So clearly, it is that tax that has to be addressed. So, look, I appreciate what you're doing, and I've enjoyed working with you, and I look to work with you in the future. But I think it's something we really need to address as a team and get this solved.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Council Member. Also, we have Councilman Gaudier, and then we have Councilman Green wants that follow-up. And I'm sorry, before the follow-up, Councilmember Johnson has his hand raised. I don't know if that's just that he's being recorded as present or if he wants to speak.
No, it's really raised.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Then,
thank you, Mr. Chair.
You can follow Jamie and then Councilmember Green.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Director Rashid, and to the whole team. I wanted to go back to the issue of neighborhood commercial corridors. Director Rashid, as you've mentioned, our small businesses on commercial corridors have been hit with several crises, right? From the shutdown to the recession to multiple cycles of civil unrest in many areas. And I'm grateful for all of the attention and all of the assistance that the Commerce Department has shown these businesses. However, even with that assistance, even with that attention, we're still finding that many businesses are still struggling to rebuild their inventory. They're still struggling to make necessary physical repairs. And I worry greatly about the viability of our neighborhood commercial corridors, heading into the future. So I wanted to get your sense of what more can we do? What more can we do to get financial resources to these businesses and to help them get back on their feet? And how are we thinking about that in this budget cycle?
Councilwoman, thank you for that question. I'm not sure if you were on when we were recounting the money that we've already put into the commercial quarters to help them rebuild, to build up inventory. If there are restaurants, to help them be able to meet the guidelines so they can open up at 50%, hopefully even higher soon. So a tremendous amount of money that we have already put, given the fact, in spite of the pandemic, into neighborhood businesses. And as we look at the commerce budget that we have submitted, and also the stimulus money, which is going to be coming down in more than one tranche, neighborhood businesses are prioritized. I'd be happy to talk to you, offline about what some of our ideas, but they're prioritized. Karen is here with her staff, and they work very closely with neighborhood businesses. The number one thing, and this is obvious, the number one thing we hear from neighborhood businesses is they need capital. They want to expand, and we provide capital. We work with PIDC to provide capital. We work with the CDCs around town to provide capital, as well as management expertise. Looking into the future, one of the things that we want to do is we want to help local businesses be able to buy their buildings, because we see so many businesses that as soon as they start becoming successful, the landlord sees that, and the landlord goes up on the rent. And sometimes the new rent is so much that they just shut down. I can't afford it. So we think that the neighborhood corridors are going to become more and more valuable, quite frankly, in the future. And if you can buy those buildings, you can protect yourself against someone else, taking that business from you. I was so pleased last week. PIDC made a loan to a young woman on 52nd, I believe, 52nd and Market, to buy her building. She had an early child care center, and they made a loan to her. Not a lot of money, but I think it was about $150,000 to help her buy her building, which saved her, because that's a hot area, and she was able to save that so she wouldn't get put out, and she was able to save her business. So it's things like that we think that we can do, and PIDC is a great vehicle for being able to do that.
I thank you for prioritizing neighborhood businesses and the program that allows small businesses to buy their buildings. You're right. 52nd Street. We recently did a study on the state of affordable housing in the 3rd District. 52nd Street was identified as a gentrifying area among many others in my district. So I have a great concern about the future of the corridor and making sure that it remains a center for Black commerce and culture in particular. And so I think that's a very important program. I also think that, in many areas of my district and probably in many other areas of the city, we need to have capital for trusted entities to do development, to ensure that we can control specific parts of the corridor and make sure that what happens, particularly in gentrifying areas, is advantageous to the surrounding community. So I encourage us to be thinking along those lines too. And I do look forward to talking with more detail about the plan for neighborhood corridors and businesses.
Thank you. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. I also wanted to just stress, I really appreciated the conversation with my colleague, Councilmember Gilmore Richardson, around workforce development. I want to encourage us to also think about that in a way that is place-based. So what I mean by that is there are areas of my district, like around the lower Schuylkill, where either the city owns land or quasi-entities like PIDC owns a considerable amount of property, and we are using that as a business attraction opportunity, which we should be, right? But I don't perceive us as having as great an emphasis on workforce development as we do on the business attraction / physical development piece of that work. And so I think the opportunity is to focus on physical development, to focus on business attraction in a way that brings a lot of jobs to our communities, but to do that in a way that is equitable and that matters for the people who already live in that community. And so, like Councilmember Gilmore Richardson said, we have to be thinking now about workforce development in a way that can match the people who live there to job opportunities and to business opportunities as we build out areas like the lower Schuylkill and the Navy Yard. And I don't think that happens by accident. It happens with intention. It happens with and it happens with investment in the time that we have now before, those jobs come to our area. So I look forward to, I would love to know how you're thinking about that. And I look forward to partnering with you on it as well.
Thank you. I'd be happy to talk to you more about it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to, just acknowledge my good friend Michael Rashid, and as we look forward, figuring out how we continue to partner around supporting, particularly Black and Brown businesses, and making sure that they are able to go to scale from a resource and technical support aspect from the city of Philadelphia. And want to take a moment to acknowledge some work that my colleague Derek Green and Rob Wonderling have been working on with the chamber regarding addressing support for small and larger businesses as it relates to the city of Philadelphia, and really looking at the policies around supporting Black and Brown businesses, but most importantly, what's the strategic plan forward to make sure that those businesses thrive. And one of the initiatives that I want to dovetail off of what Councilwoman Gaudier talked about, as well as Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson, is an example of how we want to continue to take initiative to scale, particularly around workforce, is the Philadelphia Skills Forward initiative. And that initiative focuses on hiring 5,000 young people as it relates to the workforce. It's a partnership with Graduate Philadelphia, Philadelphia Works, and Accenture. And this will provide us an opportunity to specifically focus on job skills for young people and people in general for the 21st century, with careers track specializing in customer support, health, technology and administration, entrepreneurship, and digital literacy. We have a forum coming up, particularly around this particular initiative, just to make sure that, again, we're the number one big city when it comes to poverty. But as Councilman Jamie Gaudier talked about, we only eliminate that stigma by being intentional. Intentional around our policy, intentional around our resources. And so I just wanted to state that for the record, it's one of the bright spots in terms of things that we're doing to move the city forward. But I look forward to working with you. I look forward to working also with Regina Harrison, who's now the executive director of the African American Chamber of Commerce, and making sure that we're intentional about partnering. And I want to just say this for the record. African American businesses are more than just subs. We have prime businesses as well. And we have to be intentional about making sure that we're not only focusing on the same old individuals receiving the same old opportunity. That's why I'm proud of the work that my staff worked on in partnership with Ann Nevins and PIDC, making sure that the 10-year master plan at the Navy Yard, and also Rob Wonderling played a major role in that as well, with Mosaica being like the lead, and an ensemble being the lead on developing that 10-year plan. But you have a minority firm, right? Well, not only use the word minority, a Black African-American firm, male and woman, male and female, man and woman, leading this effort, which shows that when we're intentional about the policies that we create around social equity and making sure that all boats rise with the tide, it could be done. And so I look forward to continue working with you, Mr. Rashid. You keep up the good work. Anyway, I have to be supportive of you. Don't hesitate to reach out and let me know.
Well, thank you, Councilman. I just want to say quickly, thank you for your leadership at the Hillco development. As you know, this is a tremendous development for our city. It's a footprint that's larger than Center City itself. $13 billion project, 10,000 jobs, and we attend those meetings, monthly meetings with Hillco, and where we're looking over their shoulder with respect to the promises that they made, not only in terms of minority hiring, prime contracting, and workforce, but also promises they made to the Philadelphia School District, which is extremely important. Your staff has been attending those meetings, and your staff has been very vocal and very pointed in terms of the expectations and the idea that we don't want to hear a year or 2 years from now that they tried, but they were not successful. It's not going to work that way. What starts bad is going to end worse. And so we want to start on the right foot with Hilco, and that's what your people has been emphasizing.
And I just want to say for the record that we requested up front 50% minority participation, not only just around workforce, but also vendors and professional services contracts. And really, as a city, we need to begin looking at how that should be the standard, because I know for a fact it could be done because we did the same requirement for the Cordish Live Casino. And they have surpassed that 50% goal. They're up around 56%, right? And so that's an example of how we're intentional around our policy. We know that we can reach those goals and making sure that everybody have an opportunity to participate. And so before I wrap up, there's a young man who's also part of the panelists going to testify, named Tariq Ryan, who has a restaurant called Chef Riki's. I just want to personally give him a public shout out. He has very fine catering. He comes from South Philadelphia, so I'm going to give him that public acknowledgement, because oftentimes, again, when we have businesses that are working hard to go to scale, we want to continue to support them and wrap our arms around them. So Chef Riki, you keep up the good work. I'll be passed to get some of that vegan French toast sometime in the future. And take care. All right, thank y'all very much for allowing me to, Mr. Chairman, to say my comments.
Thank you, Council Member. Appreciate it. And Councilmember Green, did you have a follow-up?
Mr. Chair, thank you. I'm going to withdraw my question. Thank you.
Sorry about that. I was unable to unmute. Thank you, and thank you, Commissioner. We really appreciate your time today, and there will be a lot more testimony to hear. So I don't know if you or your team wanted to hang out for a little bit to hear some of those things.
Yes, sir. We're very interested. We'll be right here.
All right. Thank you so much. And Mr. McMonagle, would you read the next panel?
Yes, can we please have Rob Wunderling, Regina Hairston, Nick Shinoy, and Kendra Moore?
All right, Rob, do you want to start first in that order? Just state your name for the record and then proceed.
Will do, Chairman Squilla. Again, for the record, my name is Rob Wunderling. I serve as the president and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce for Greater Philadelphia. And to both you and Councilmember Green, we really do appreciate you as we move through a post-pandemic reopening recovery for the city for revisiting this issue around ease of doing business. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to the colloquy and questions from you and Councilman Green and the members of council with our newly minted Commerce Director, Michael Rashid. And I can speak on behalf of our chamber and the business community that Commerce Director Rashid is just off to an outstanding start. We already had a strong partnership with the Commerce Department. So what I think Michael has done in a short amount of time, as evidenced, I think, by his answers to the questions, is to be highly collaborative, strategic, and tactical. And I must say, at this early day in his tenure, I cannot think of any issue or matter that we're not in alignment with him and his team. It's been a real delight. We're moving with urgency and dispatch because we think the stakes are very, very high, and look forward to continuing to work with the county administration, Commerce Director Rashid, broadly, and on the specific issues that the resolution is focusing on today, which I think by all quarters and agreement based on fact and data, we have work to do. But I do think the investments made even during the pandemic by the Commerce Department, the administration, L&I, et cetera, is a good start and baseline going forward. So I will read my remarks. I will move quickly so that other participants on this panel can proceed, and then open, obviously, questions and comments from you and your colleagues on council. So we really do thank you for hosting this important hearing regarding the ease of doing business in Philadelphia. And as the city does look towards a post-pandemic future, we have to be committed to getting Philadelphians back to work. We need to ensure that the city, regardless of where they live, get back into those office buildings, onto those commercial corridors, and throughout those neighborhood enterprises. We also have to ensure people's safety on an ongoing basis from COVID-19. But I must say, I can think of no other decision that will have as much of an impact on our city's future than what we can do together to restart our economy, is to get those jobs back, get people working again, create high-paying jobs, grow the pie, and particularly and most specifically among our working poor and those in poverty that were the case prior to the pandemic and sadly have increased their ranks during the pandemic. So as the city is moving forward to recover from this pandemic, and with as much as $1.2 billion in one-time federal stimulus coming to the city, we really do now more than ever to make sure it's easier for entrepreneurs to start a business, reopen their business. We need to improve the regulatory environment for existing businesses. And of course, recent statistics demonstrate that this is a point of urgency, as 1,000 Philadelphia area businesses have closed since March 2020. Our labor market has shrank by 45,000 individuals since February of last year. And we have to ensure that these impacted residents, those that are out of work, and those businesses that have shuttered or are struggling to stay in business, really fully take part in an equitable and inclusive recovery. We need to be absolutely obsessed in a private-public partnership in making it easier for all businesses, especially our neighborhood-based businesses, to reopen, to grow, to add jobs, and they cannot face additional hurdles in doing so. Now, we know there's a significant amount of work to do to make it easier to begin and operate a business in Philadelphia, and let's use facts and data to make that point. In 2019, Philadelphia was ranked 12th most difficult city to start a business in the United States, with a level of difficulty in opening a small to mid-sized business, hiring employees, paying taxes, getting operating permits, etc. And so the top-ranked cities, our competition, if you will, that are much easier to do business include Atlanta, which was mentioned earlier this morning, Charlotte, Oklahoma City, Arlington, Virginia, just to name a few. And this is just taken from one index, and I know there will be testimony later in today's hearing looking at other indexes. And there are many third-party indexes that currently measure Philadelphia as a place where it's easy or difficult to do business. And in all those indexes, we don't fare very well. So in January, our Chamber of Commerce announced that it was seeking to create a new partnership with our city government, with all of you individually and collectively in City Council, and with our ongoing commitments to neighborhood growth throughout the city. And we think that is an important partnership as we work on plans to reopen our city, to bring businesses back downtown and throughout each neighborhoods while still starting to and continuing to fight the virus. It's a comprehensive approach to a smart pro-growth policies that will, we think, drive our future in the city of Philadelphia. I'm not going to go through the list now, but many were touched on in Commerce Director Rashid's remarks and the questions regarding restoration of the Commerce Department's budget. We have ideas on exempting micro business completely from the BIRD as already defined by law. But in particular, we think we have a unique moment now with the $1.2 billion coming to this government, where if we work in partnership and work smartly, we could allocate resources for which the entire free enterprise system in the city, the business community writ large, would benefit on a long-term basis, where we can manage equity and growth and create jobs on a going forward basis. So we look forward in working with this legislative body and the mayor and our commerce director as those budget deliberations begin with the mayor's budget announcement in about a month from now. Look, Philadelphia has long recognized that it needs to make doing business in this city easier. We think with the new stimulus funds coming in, we do have this unique opportunity to shape a different growth, inclusive growth strategy that is both short-term and long-term for this city. And I'll end where I began. We really applaud the chair here, Councilman Squilla, Councilman Green, for introducing the Ease of Doing Business resolution. We think it not only kickstarts, but it builds on and restarts a process that we know that we need to work on an ongoing basis. Look, starting and running a business is hard enough. It shouldn't be made any harder by unnecessary red tape or inflexible bureaucracy. And my final comment, and I know I've shared this with Councilman Jones, we think a really good strategy going forward on all things we work on together is one that would be do no harm. And that the moment we're talking about something, say legislatively or otherwise, perhaps collectively we should ask the question, does this harm and make it more difficult for a business to reopen and to grow and to provide jobs for our residents in the city or not? And we hope going forward, one of the key tenets to make it easier to do business in the city of Philadelphia is the tenet of do no harm. Thank you, Chairman Squilla.
Thank you, Rob, for your testimony. Much appreciated. And knowing that we need to all work together to resolve this and get us back on our feet again. It looks like we do have them. Do you want to ask questions now, or should we let's do the panel, and then if Rob, if you don't mind, we'll wait and then ask you questions all at the same time. All right, so who was next?
Good morning, Regina Hairston for the African American Chamber of Commerce.
All right, Regina, just, you stated your name, just begin with your testimony. Thank you.
Sure. Good morning, Chairman Squilla and members of the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. My name is Regina Hairston, President of the African American Chamber of Commerce, PA, New Jersey, and Delaware. I am here to testify on behalf of Resolution 200109. Philadelphia has long recognized the importance of local businesses to the economic viability of the city and has sought to foster their development. And this council continues to recognize the need in developing equal and equitable policies that create greater access, efficiently, and timely services for all businesses to compete in our local economy, particularly Black-owned businesses. The creation of the Special Committee on Regulatory Review and Reform has played a significant role in identifying archaic and confusing provisions in both the Philadelphia Code and departmental regulations. I thank the Special Committee and its co-chairs for their efforts to continually recommend revisions and streamline, clarify, and enhance the city's regulatory environment. For the purpose of accelerating the growth of well-paying jobs in Philadelphia while ensuring the safety and well-being of its residents, and the administration's adoption of the Business Owners Bill of Rights, and yet another affirmation that the city is seeking to provide businesses with the most effective services. However, the mission is not complete and there is still much work to be done. In order to ensure businesses are provided adequate resources to ease the process of doing business in the city and to level the playing field for minority-owned and disadvantaged businesses. Last week marked the one-year anniversary of the start of COVID-19 pandemic and the implementation of stay-at-home orders across the region. The pandemic has brought to light many of the inequities that existed and continue to be exacerbated through the crisis. Small businesses across the nation have been devastated by the pandemic, but none hit harder than the Black-owned businesses. Nationally, Black businesses have shuttered and were less likely to receive federal aid compared to other groups. At the start of the pandemic, the Philadelphia Business Journal reported that people of color in Philadelphia was disproportionately underbanked, as are minority-owned and disadvantaged businesses. Black-owned businesses have had difficulty navigating the federal loan program and competing with better network companies. Further, the U.S. Census Bureau also indicated that the number of active Black business owners fell by 68% from early March to July 2020, while the number of active white businesses fell just by 44% during the same time. But what is the city of Philadelphia's role in all of this? Could it be a stronger resource to small businesses within our region? And the answer is absolutely. Businesses, especially local minority-owned business, have been severely impacted by by the deficiency of the city's infrastructure, including but not limited to obtaining L&I permits and having to pay for fees and penalties, again, after appeal dates were not set or expired during the early months of the pandemic, essential city websites being down or repaired when businesses needed to get the necessary information to qualify for PPP funding, and the inability to truly understand what they needed to get a second chance to help those businesses survive that serve as both an economic and social pillar for our most vulnerable and disadvantaged communities. Rebuilding together during and after this pandemic means listening, learning, and adequate representation for every business and citizen. Moreover, support for minority-owned and disadvantaged-owned businesses must be concentrated at the forefront. History has shown that when small businesses thrive, our communities flourish. This is a time of great innovation and opportunity, and as the president of the African American Chamber of Commerce, I am eager to build on the momentum and work with council and the administration as we reimagine, reset, and reinvest in our business infrastructure for a sustainable future. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. And before I conclude, I just want to speak on several points that was made this morning and highlight those as priorities. And that is technical assistance for our Black-owned businesses, more city procurement opportunities, and access to affordable capital. And I would be remiss if I did not mention equity in the vaccine. If we expect our economy to begin to move and thrive, people must feel comfortable to come back out and spend their money in the economy. And that means the Black community must receive an equitable vaccination as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your testimony and knowing what challenges we've had here in the city of Philadelphia and trying to work with Commerce to address a lot of these concerns that you broach here. It's so important for us as a city to work together. We know Commerce had grant programs, and I'm going to ask Karen. I don't know if Karen's still on there, but out of the city's grant dollars, do you know what our percentages were of how we were able to reach out to these businesses? Karen Faley? Maybe she's not there. But I know that there was going to be a big push for that. Commissioner, are you available for that?
Yeah, Councilman, yes, I am here. In one grant program, over 60% of the dollars went to African American and quarter businesses. In another program, over 80% went to African American and brown businesses. And in our recent restaurant program, over half of the dollars for restaurant improvement, so they could get to 50%, over half of those dollars went to restaurants outside of Center City. So I don't have a number, but I know that how many of them were African American, but at least they were neighborhood businesses. But
okay.
we can get you more specific analysis of each one of those tranches of money.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. I know more people have questions. We were going to finish the panel. I just wanted to see if we had that point, because that was a major concern. Mr. Gumano, you wanted to read the other two panelists, and then
yes,
we'll go to
can we please have Nick Shinoy and Kendra Moore?
Yes. This is Nick Shinoy. I'm off the camera. I have a shaving cuts, so forgive me. I'm going to read a prepared statement, and I hope you have the copies. If not, I will make sure you get one. My name is Narasimha Shinoy, founder, president of the Asian American Chamber of Commerce of Greater Philadelphia. I will read the prepared statement. We are a membership nonprofit organization that serves Asian businesses, individual entrepreneurs, and nonprofit organizations for the growth of economy and employment in Greater Philadelphia area. We focus our resources mainly in the city. Recent studies indicates how City of Philadelphia is far behind the other major cities in minority business startup and growth. Doing business in Philadelphia has its challenges, as Philadelphia has been perceived as a non-business friendly for small and micro businesses, and particularly for minority immigrant community. Majority of Asian businesses are small and micro and are family owned by first generation immigrants. Philadelphia environment is not particularly hospitable for Asian businesses as well as our community at large. Time and time again, we hear about business being overburdened with the constant violation and fines. Many businesses may be unaware and not well informed that a violation was committed and are hurt as a result of punitive damages. Regulatory enforcement personnel should be trained to help businesses to comply rather than use it to shut them down. For many years, City Council has targeted Asian businesses through unfriendly regulations. A recent lawsuit filed against the city by Asian business owners for discrimination, which resulted in city providing compensation, highlights such anti-Asian business sentiment. In addition, during the recent riots, businesses were looted, and some were looted more than once due to lack of police protection. Some businesses were torched. Many Asian family businesses owners live in the same building. Fortunately, there were no fatalities. COVID-19 stigma has further added to the safety concern as business owners face increasing hate crimes. Many businesses will not be reopening in corridors as they are afraid that city will no longer protect their investment and their lives. This is an urgent need. There is an urgent need for the city to initiate a program to help businesses and community to feel safe to reopen. The city must do a better job of supporting small businesses with taxation, fair taxation and regulations. Transparency and cooperation efforts with affected businesses needed to accelerate recovery process. I do have some recommendations listed for the time. Because of the time frame, I will just pass it on. You can read that. But I do want to make one recommendation. The diverse chambers have limited resources to make any significant impact in this recovery process, as they have limited resources. Adequate resources needed for them to be able to serve their business members. Finally, quarter of city population is below the city poverty level. City needs to focus on job creation to reduce poverty. It is critical, especially in this phase of recovery, to support businesses to create jobs by providing business-friendly environment. Closing down these businesses through burdened regulatory process can only add to the ever-increasing poverty level. We thank Councilman Derek Green for hosting this hearing and giving us an opportunity to express our opinions and concerns. This is an opportunity for dialogue and an opportunity to create an environment in which explicit expectations of how city will work in collaboration with businesses and are accountable for its customers and residents. This concludes my testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Do you want to continue? Let's go to the next testifier, and then we have people with questions.
Thank you, Committee Chair Squilla and committee members, for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Kendra Moore with the Sustainable Business Network of Greater Philadelphia. Please accept the following testimony on Resolution 200109. SBN appreciates the invitation to participate today and the ongoing conversations that we've had with the Commerce Director and his team. And let me first say that we support many of the points raised by our colleagues today. And for the purposes of time, I will also summarize my written testimony, which provides further detail for your review. In order to ensure the long-term sustainability of community-based economic corridors and local economies, it's really critical that we intentionally prioritize and incentivize local independent businesses to start, grow, and thrive. As you may know, SBN has worked with the city on the ease of doing business for at least a decade. In 2011, we released our Taking Care of Business report, which provided recommendations on how the city could support small business growth. And one of those recommendations, we called on the city to establish the Business Owners Bill of Rights in order to establish and increase the level of customer service that business owners can and should expect when they interact with city agencies. And we worked through the Special Committee on Regulatory Review and Reform and with our partners on this foundational document, which the city adopted in 2019. And we applaud the city for continuing to seek measures and input to improve the ease of doing business. And despite limited resources due to budget cuts, Commerce has maintained or developed initiatives that aim to help entrepreneurs and businesses navigate a very complex bureaucratic landscape, access capital, and secure their footing in the midst of the pandemic. However, although there has been progress, the city must address many other barriers to starting and growing a business. The pandemic, as we all know, has exacerbated these challenges, particularly for business owners from historically marginalized groups, and it's demonstrated the urgent need to create an equitable and positive ecosystem based on our local businesses. And the city's budget needs to reflect this as a priority. Some recommendations. While it's a critical foundational document, the Business Owners Bill of Rights lacks an accountability structure to ensure that city departments are implementing it effectively. The city, through the Commerce Department, should have the budget support to develop metrics and timeframes, collect data, and make those findings public. The city should also actively promote and remove the cap for its groundbreaking sustainable business tax credit. And in addition to the city's steps to increase transparency, diversity, and localism through procurement, it should also seek ways to expand local values-based government contracting and public commercial leasing practices to prioritize diverse local businesses and socially and environmentally responsible business practices. The city should also expand on the Office of Economic Opportunities disparity studies, collecting data on the business landscape related to demographic disparities, as well as rates of business creation, health, and vitality as a tool to better understand the needs of diverse independent businesses and the barriers they face. We also continue to call on the city to undertake tax reform to ensure parity in the business tax structure. We know that's a very difficult thing to do, and we continue to welcome conversations on that. We also continue to call on the city to eliminate inefficiencies associated with outdated regulations and zoning codes, streamline licensing, permitting, and inspection processes, and ensure that these regulations and codes actually support local independent businesses and not make it needlessly more complicated for them. Lastly, the city should prioritize local independent business development in addition to business attraction, which we recognize is important, but the backbone of the economy here in the city is independent businesses. We should focus on owners from historically marginalized communities, and as my colleague Nick Shenoy mentioned, provide support to backbone business service organizations like those here that provide critical services to our local independent business community. By undertaking these recommendations and providing sufficient programmatic and budget support, the city could make significant progress in easing the burdens on new entrepreneurs and establish local independent businesses, leading to a more equitable and inclusive ecosystem. It needs to be intentional. It's not an easy task. And of course, SBN appreciates the opportunity to participate in this conversation and continue the important work of making Philadelphia a place where diverse local businesses can thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Is there any questions from any members on the committee?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Councilmember Green.
Yeah, thank you. Don't thank all the people on this panel for testifying, for your work, for the various constituencies that you represent and support. You really help the bread and butter of our neighborhoods and communities. I just have a question, and this could be for anyone on the panel. I think there's someone that has their microphone on. If they could put it on mute, that way the panelists and the rest of the audience can hear. Okay, thank you. Considering that, last year we, as a city, had a $750 million budget deficit that we had to close before the new fiscal year. And this year, for FY22, we have a $450 million budget deficit. I'm curious from your perspective on the fact that under the American Rescue Plan, the city will receive over $1 billion. As I said in my opening remarks, about 50% of those dollars will be available within less than 60 days based on drawdowns from the federal government. And considering the need to really grow businesses coming out of this pandemic, for the people on this panel, I'm curious on your thoughts on how those dollars should be best prioritized in reference to helping businesses really survive and thrive coming out of this pandemic.
Councilor Green, I'll lead off. I appreciate the question. I also think it reflects what will have to be an ongoing dialogue with you and your colleagues in the administration. But a couple of sort of touchstones on the 1.2 bill. One, we do think that there is a need to continue to reposition the one-time dollars to fight the virus and to encourage reopening strategies. That could be everything from a marketing campaign to encourage employers and employees to, and particularly employees to return, say, to the central business district and other key areas in the city, to perhaps making sure, particularly for the one-time resource, so it doesn't become a reoccurring line item, that it's repositioned, let's say, for example, to have the appropriate number of health inspectors that would accelerate the reopening of our restaurant communities as the COVID-19 restrictions wear off. So if you look at it through the lens, first, of reopening in one-time federal use of those dollars, how could they deploy it on a one-time basis to accelerate reopening, which has a lot to do to rebuild confidence for citizens that it is safe to be in Philadelphia, not just Center City, but in the neighborhoods. Second, pre-pandemic, and according to the Center City Business District, Paul Levy's organization, barely 1% of the total general fund was used for growth, for job creation, et cetera. And so beyond the restoration of the Commerce Department's budget, we think there's opportunity to leverage the $1.2 billion that would free up on an ongoing basis general fund dollars that would drive growth strategies, inclusive growth strategies, beyond a grant program, in all candor, that would look at perhaps the opportunity of hybrid work environments to create more growth in the tax structure. Kendra just referenced the difficulty around tax reform. We actually think now, probably in the first time in a decade, there's this unique opportunity to really think through how to use the one-time federal stimulus to propel a confidence-building message to particularly small and mid-sized businesses that the city is open for business. I will tell you, other competing cities are having this exact same conversation around the $1.2 billion, and we'd hate to lose that opportunity and would want to continue that conversation with you.
I would just like to add to that, if I may. So one thing we found that was so important for Black businesses is access to information. I think President Biden said it best: you don't know what you don't know. And so there has to be a campaign. All of the chambers do a really good job about getting the information out to its members, but everyone isn't a member of the chamber. So it's important to get that information out to the larger community. And we do work with the city on various campaigns to do that as well. But there's one important thing that I'll say, information such as the employee retention tax credit. If you're not connected to information, you don't know that there's a $7,000 per employee per quarter that is available for you. And that helps businesses save on their cash. So information like that is super important. That stimulates their bottom line immediately if they just have access to the information that's in the American Rescue Plan. So having a campaign where we're all working together, speaking the same language as we already do, but pushing it out further beyond our constituents would be major for our businesses.
All right. Thank you very much. Councilmember Dom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually have a question for Director Rashid and a question for Rob Wunderling. For Director Rashid, I was just wondering, because economic development is so important in stimulus package, I was wanted to make sure that you had a seat at the budget table with the administration, and just want you to know that whatever we could do to support you to make sure that you are a voice on this issue and making sure that you have some say in this versus them giving you, some scraps at the end of the day. You need to be at that table and you need to be really advocating for all the issues that we're talking about. And I'd love for you to take a leadership role in this.
Well, thank you, Councilman. I appreciate your support. I am at the table. Have been at the table. I think, as I indicated earlier, oh my God, at least 2 months ago, discussion started about what, even before President Biden took office, this discussions started within the administration about various options to deal with taxes, et cetera. They are continuing. I am at the table. I work for the administration. However, you understand that I'm not the final decision maker, but I do have an opportunity to weigh in. So I appreciate your support.
All right, thank you. And then for Rob, Chamber of Commerce has been around a long time, and we've probably never seen this kind of injection of cash into our local economy. And in the Chamber's opinion, what three things would be our best investments of this money? What three things?
Well, that's a great question, particularly since you and your colleagues have not seen such lack of growth. We haven't had a zero to no growth city, particularly related to job creation, for almost 25, 30 years. This is a new experience for all of us, and we applaud the Biden administration in bringing the resources to cities across America. I think in the case of Philadelphia, and I think there's principles first that would ought to drive that investment. One, it would be very tempting in the short term to layer this into existing programs, but then become budgetary issues in the out years when the federal dollars wear off. So we have to keep reminding ourselves and be smart about that it's one time. I know it's going to come in two tranches, but one time. And so if that's a principle, I'll expand upon strategies to accelerate reopening of all businesses in the city, not necessarily in a one-time grant that you kind of have to wait in line and, oh, sorry, you didn't get there in time or you didn't qualify. But what are the structural, and I think a number of folks testified, talked about the infrastructure. What tools could the administration have investments made one time that make it easier to do business? Michael Rashid touched on it in his testimony. So reopening infrastructure, I think, would be one of those key investments. Second is we're still going to have to fight the virus, and let's not turn our back on the insidious nature of variants and whatnot that it's emerging. And so I do think longer term commitments to the public health and safety, not just through the DOH, but related to our police and law enforcement and issues around our vulnerable populations. There's an opportunity there to reset and lay in motion. And if you add those two together, we may actually be able to move that proverbial needle around issues of poverty, because we will leverage the significant amount of federal dollars in that regard. And then third, in terms of investments, and I alluded to this, at one level it is complicated, but I do think, and you've been a great champion around tax reform, and it's tax reform, quite frankly, for small and mid-sized entrepreneurs. They're the ones, as was suggested by Kendra, is the backbone of the city's economy. That's where you'll accelerate job creation, right? Every once in a while, we'll have a company come to town and locate 450 jobs, and we're not going to stop doing that business attraction work. But if you think about the fungible opportunities in the general fund to actually make commitments to the degree I haven't seen since Ed Rendell was mayor, where there is a significant amount committed every year to economic development and growth, and as Councilman Green said, it's a political document, the budget. That's the process of a budget deliberation. But if a benchmark was set in post-federal dollars that would be committed to over the years, that we want to take what's less than 1% committed pre-pandemic to the general fund to a higher percentage, but the political budgetary deliberations figure out how to do that, measure against that. Are we making it easier to do business on that index that we're going to hear from later this afternoon? Are we creating net new jobs that are living wage? And oh, by the way, when we started our Recover plan, yes, we're committing to retrain and hire 5,000 out-of-work folks in the city. That's just the start. That's just the number that we're starting with. We're going to grow that because we're very concerned about several thousands of individuals in the city that might be automated out of their occupation in the next 2 to 3 to 5 years. So that kind of investment in a broader economic development commitment post-federal dollars would be the third area.
This is my last question, and I'm going to put you on the spot, Rob. With the Chamber of Commerce support, which is something I've been talking about for 5 years, mandatory teaching of financial literacy, pre-K to 12, technology, pre-K to 12, and entrepreneurship, pre-K to 12, and going to the state to get permission to allow 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders to work 1 day a week in a job and 4 days they go to school at their option.
Well, sure. We would be advocates for the type of curriculum changes you just outlined. That's not that it cannot be done. You got to change the educational code at the Commonwealth to do that, both for financial literacy and technology. We think technology should be at a minimum elective, no different than art, music, and a foreign language. And it is technology. It's not just coding, but absolutely would agree to that point. Any type of co-op programs, we've been in conversations for a number of years. Yet another opportunity now post-pandemic and post-federal dollars to sort of think about what would be a mainstream, I'll use the word co-op program, required for the school district of Philadelphia. We think there's an opportunity to, and there's.
I think, Rob, I don't know if you could hear us, Rob. I think you froze for a little bit there. We didn't hear just the very end.
Only suggest that we would also be supportive of some type, and I'll use the term co-op, arrangements and requirements for Philadelphia school students. The school district of Philadelphia already has several working pilots in this regard, where you get credentialed and up to a 2 years associate degree if that's the path that you're taking. And we think there's opportunity with appropriate resources to expand that.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you very much. Is there any other questions for this panel? Seeing none. We'll have to read the title for the next panel.
Okay, can we please have Victor Garrido, Joan Waters, Tariq Ryan, and Bashara Kutab available, please? I'm sorry if I messed anyone's name.
Good morning.
Please proceed.
Good morning, Chairman Esquila and members of the committee. I'm Victor Garrido, Certified Public Accountant. Thank you for your opportunity to appear before you today. In addition to my professional background, I participate in numerous organizations in support to small business, including the Community College of Philadelphia, Finanta, which is now the Community First Fund, and the Greater Philadelphia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, where I'm a member of the board. Today, I speak on behalf of business owners in Philadelphia who are the backbone of our economy and the greatest generator of jobs. So as some of my colleagues have discussed and other professional groups, I think we think like Philadelphia taxes, as well as the services that these businesses pay for need to improve. Some of you mentioned like the tax impact on businesses, like the MPT, BRT, wage tax, right? That accounts for 44%. And in the pandemic, so many of those workers are not longer coming to Philadelphia. They might be working outside. So it's something like to consider, but it impacts the business owners. And especially like regarding services. So businesses in Philadelphia need a responsive partner in their local government. I know this goal is shared by the administration and council, and we are aware of the hard work during the pandemic. We know, even during the civil unrest, revenue department has been going to the offices trying to get things running. The commerce department too. So that has been like amazing to see them, and I know firsthand how hard they have worked. With some of these new programs that they have mentioned. However, the reality is business owners, they struggle in Philadelphia, and it's not an easy place for a business to grow. There are complex systems in place, as some of them mentioned, and there are recent examples. I will mention some recent examples of like how they struggle. If a restaurant wants to change ownership, it's so many times so difficult to move the new licenses. And there might be disagreements between departments, between the business inspector and the health department on how to set up a new sink just to wash the lettuce. If the previous business license was not active, this will have been a really disaster for the new restaurant owner. We have also small restaurants or like supermarkets, right, that they try to get their license being approved, and they are paying monthly rent, and sometimes they take quite a long time, right? Like there are ways to expedite. You can pay a $375, I believe, additional fee to expedite it for 10 days. But sometimes there might be missing documentation and things like that. So sometimes the inspector just off the record tells the business just to close down, and say like, okay, we are missing maybe a plan or we are missing something. Please, let's close it. Because otherwise, if I make it official, I will have you closed for a long time. So, if that happens, if I'm starting to get a place or like I have to shut my business, my rent keeps running. The taxes related to use and occupancy and so on, real estate tax that so many times the tenant pays continues running, which makes like more difficult for the business owner. So that might be like so many times as they mentioned, and I think Indra Moore mentioned, there's no accountability at the city level, knowing, okay, I received the plans and all the documentation on a Tuesday, I'm giving 2 weeks time and I should have a resolution for you, but we don't know what is missing. If something is missing, we have the bills of right that was passed and was approved, and it was a great effort just before the pandemic, but there's no real tracking or accountability of who is doing it and why they're doing it, and what is missing and why is something delayed, right? Sometimes Eclipse is a great system, the email is a great system, but sometimes documents are just sitting there. We can get letters for liquor tax when they have been paid, or filings from a long time ago due to e-files that they were like glitches in the system. So I don't want this testimony to be an attack on the city, as in all these cases they were addressed by the departments, revenue, commerce, once we brought it to their attention. But there are important systemic progress that we keep to be doing, as everyone mentioned before. So business owner can focus on their business, they can create jobs, build a stronger economy, and continue supporting local business. I will mention just before I finish, is like Mr. Rashid mentioned that around 200 restaurants out of the probably around 6,000 before the pandemic, they had the increased capacity, right? The 25% to 50% that you are all aware, which is extremely complicated, right? There has to be like 15 air exchanges. The filter has to be better than in a medical facility, right? Like MERV 11, 20% of the air is circulated. Like 200 restaurants out of 6,000 is just a 3%, when they have been like extremely impacted. So I think some of these measures, even if like they are meant well for the business owner, is extremely difficult to navigate through. And even if it's allowing the business potentially to increase the seating capacity, sometimes it's just impossible for them to go through like these obstacles. So I appreciate Councilman Green, allowing me to appear, and Chairman Esquila, and I'm available for any question, but I appreciate you allowing us to speak in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Much appreciated. Joan, I'm not sure who was next, or whoever was next, just state your name for the record and proceed.
Joan Waters, please.
Joan, you want to state your name and then proceed with your testimony?
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, this is Joan Waters. I am CEO of Kafka. We are a commercial furniture dealer located at 2200 North American, and also have a property at 2400 North American Street. So we are located on an industrial corridor, which we consider to be an important part of the city. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to testify today. There's been so many outstanding points made prior to my testimony. I think we've talked about the importance of inclusive growth throughout the city. We've talked about so many of the pieces we've talked about why and how this city needs to continue to grow, and it has to be done through inclusive growth. I'd like to just touch on what I think as a business owner, we're not a micro business, we're a small to medium-sized business. We have a $50 million revenue, and we employ 85 people here in the city. What I would like to have the committee consider and remember is that making it easier to do business and helping businesses in the city of Philadelphia that compete on a regional or national basis, and finding ways to make it less cumbersome for them to be competitive, I think is something the city has to take into consideration. I've testified prior to today, and one of my issues that I talk about on a regular basis, when we compete with a suburban competitor, they are able to charge a lower tax rate than we are. That coupled with, and I could go through, but for the sake of time, I won't, all the additional costs that we face as being a proud owner of a business in Philadelphia, we pay so many more taxes than what a competitor outside the city pays. I think council needs to understand that we are an important part of the growth and the continuation of the city. Our small business, we have people that work in a warehouse, we have drivers, we have installers, we have designers, we have salespeople, we have a very wide variety of individuals on our team. A good percentage of them are Philadelphia residents. There are those that are not Philadelphia residents, and either way, we make it very difficult to attract and bring people to our company because of the way we are forced to tax our employees. And many of the costs associated with running the business in Philadelphia continue to make it very difficult for us to be competitive when we compete with those outside the city. I would just ask, and I think Rob mentioned this, I think when we think about the benefit that is going to come as a result of the federal government's decision, how do you help those that are here in the city be more competitive? How do you help them be more effective at running their business? We've certainly struggled, as I'm sure all of you can understand. As a commercial furniture dealer, the last 12 months has been a very difficult 12 months. That being said, we're here. We've been in Philadelphia. We were founded in 1946. We've been a Philadelphia-based firm for 75 years. We continue to want to be successful and to want to be an important employer here in the city, but we need help. We need the ability to be more competitive, and we need City Council to help us get there. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Who is next to proceed?
Tariq Ryan, please.
I think he might have stepped away.
Okay.
Oh, here he comes. Here he is. No, he's here. He's here. He's coming back.
Tariq, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. No problem.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, my name is, and thank you guys for having me. My name is Tariq Ryan. I'm a restaurant owner of 3, one in the city of Philadelphia on Wood Avenue. I also have some real estate in the city. I think 9 properties in the city that I rent and, look to, invest and flip. But homegrown guy and just want to, testify that in the early, I think I'm going on my 4th year in business. And in the earlier stages of when I started, the city and PIDC and the councilman's office, even at the state rep level, helped me so much with funding because, I just had a pipe dream of opening a restaurant and, I budgeted maybe $140K to get open. I budgeted maybe $80K to get open, which actually spiraled into me, spending $140K to get open. And it was due to a lot of the points that you guys are talking about today with the, ease of business and the, how arduous it is in the city to, be viable and to open a business. I had a start date planning to open of, let's say, August 1, which probably didn't happen until that next year, maybe let's say February. So, it took me an additional 6 months to get open. And it was due in part to the fact that, and a lot of people are speaking on this point, the cohesiveness of L&I and, the Department of Public Health and the reviewers of plans that, see our plans to open these restaurants and, we might get a green light from up top or somebody in the municipal services building that looks over the plans and gives us a thumbs up. But at the field agent level, the field agent level has a whole different, scope of what he feels is incorrect or how, those people at that level in the municipal services building, they don't speak the same language. So, outside of the budget being, upside down, my bank account was upside down because I didn't expect in my business plan, I expected to be open and, making money at this month, and it just didn't happen. And at the L&I level, just something as small as, moving a pipe over 2 inches to comply with, ADA or, something that he knows that the plan reviewer didn't know, that cost me, a month and a half because we got to cut PVC or cut, cast iron. I'm sorry, because that's commercial. Cut cast iron from the bottom, remove tile just to move a pipe over 2 inches to comply with, something that the plan reviewer saw but didn't have a problem with. But at the field agent level, he did have a problem with. And not to mention, from my understanding, when license and inspection comes to review, they tell you at the first visit, everything that's wrong. You know what I mean? And that just didn't happen. He told me 2 or 3 things that was wrong. When he came back another time, he told me another 5 or 6 things that was wrong. So, it is kind of frustrating at times, dealing with, the city at these levels. And my other 2 restaurants are in Delco. And I think somebody else mentioned the ease of business and the tax breaks that are in Delaware County. And, why people are moving to Atlanta and Charlotte and other places to start a business because it's a lot easier, and it's just facts. But, what I wanted to get across to everyone today is that, I've received a lot of funding from the city from day one, through the storefront improvement program, through the forgivable loan program, the gym and restaurant grant that just opened up. So, I'm grateful that, you guys do have a contingency in place for when things kind of get hairy, but at the same time, I want to be an advocate to help, other small businesses, be viable and make it through these, tough times, because this virus from the restaurant industry, and that's, all I can speak from, it's been hell. My fixed costs are remaining the same. My PPE, masks, sanitizers, and restaurant PPE is different from, what everybody else is accustomed to. Our PPE is also styrofoam containers, plastic containers, throwaway silverware, utensils and stuff like that. So it's a lot of things that go into just changing your outfit of a restaurant from dine-in to takeout, where all of these costs are just going through the roof. My payroll now is through the roof because I can't pay my servers $2 an hour no more. And not only, that $2.80 an hour, we can't even wait on tables at some points of this pandemic. At one point we were just shut down completely. So if there's no tables for them to wait on, I have to pay them a living wage to do takeout, which is like, anywhere between $12 and $14 an hour, just to do takeout. And I'm a, successful in the brunch and, lunch kind of thing, but everybody's not in a rush to come get pancakes to take home. People want to eat pancakes like right at the table, hot, and, so it's kind of a detriment that this virus, just basically just impacted us this heavy. But to speak on some eases of business, a lot of people touched on, financial literacy and helping these businesses that need funding and really could, thrive with the funding. They just don't, some of them just don't have the capacity or the accounting software to get themselves to the funding. So, if the city could actually, help support these businesses with some workshops and, not just through PIDC, but, some workshops where, some other business owners are part of this team of yours and can actually go into these businesses, set up appointments for 1 or 2 hours and sit with them with maybe some, I don't want to say like a whole curriculum, entire curriculum, but maybe an hour or two on, how to do quarterly reports, how to, stay in compliance with the taxes in the city and, things like that. I think it'll be a lot more, businesses being able to, stay open and thrive through this.
Doing two things at the same time. Oh, I'm sorry, Terry.
Oh, I'm okay.
Well, thank you for your testimony. It's important to hear that perspective, and I think as council members are here and listening during our process of budgeting and how we look at things, I think your testimony will have an impact. So thank you very much. Prashara, are they here still to testify? If they're not, it was Prashara Katab. Okay. Mr. Monty, could you like to read to the third panel, starting with Victor?
Yes, could we please have Chris Sierra, Drake Nakashi, Peter Watts, and Troy Hayward available, please?
All right, Chris, looks like you're ready. If you just want to state your name for the record and then proceed with your testimony.
Thank you very much for your time. My name is Chris Sierra. I live in the Bella Vista section of the city with my family, and I'm also the CEO of ArcWeb Technologies in Old City. ArcWeb Technologies is a certified B Corporation, and we're a digital transformation and product development consulting firm. I'm presently on the board of the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce, and I was Small Business Person of the Year in 2016. I also co-founded Philly Startup Leaders, one of the city's largest nonprofit organizations dedicated to providing the region's entrepreneurs with support, insights, and inspiration. I've spent years of my life with Philly startup leaders saying great things about the city. And so hopefully my comments today have this perspective as my backdrop. Philadelphia is a great place to start, stay, and grow a company. On the subject of the ease of doing business, I will reference the Doing Business North America project from Arizona State University. This research puts actual numbers on issues that have been discussed in City Council for decades, including the Tax Reform Commission of 2003. And my hope is that council members use this as a punch list of easy wins that will make significant, meaningful change that goes far beyond just benefiting the business community. First of all, the rankings don't make us look great. Number 71 isn't an enviable position, and it's a departure from how we felt in 2018 when we made the top 20 cities list for Amazon's HQ2. The upside, though, is that the data gives us a roadmap for improvement, and it should be easy for council members to use this tool. For instance, the starting a business category, we're number 75, is only comprised of 3 things. Number of procedures, we have 5, the top performing city has 3. Time and working days to begin to start operations, we have 10, the top performing city has 1, and the cost of $175. I point this out just to demonstrate the simplicity of using the tool, and it even includes a fancy website to navigate back and forth. Next, the paying taxes category, we are number 83, and I believe that council members can truly make an impact here. This is where taxing both gross receipts and net income hurts us. As a strategy, I think we should just pick one. Most economic development experts I know say we should eliminate or reduce the net income taxes in order to make Philadelphia more attractive to businesses that want to move here. Even if that strategy is implemented, we have an extremely aggressive practice of forcing businesses to prepay their taxes starting in their second year. I call this the second year slap, and thanks to the Special Committee on Regulatory Review and Reform, this is paid quarterly instead of a large lump sum prepayment annually, but it still just needs to go away. Imagine if we told Philadelphia teenagers that after they got their first job, that they need to start prepaying their taxes on money they haven't made yet. One of my business mentors would describe this practice as eating our young, and long before they can grow to become a big job and skills creator. I'm not a legal expert, but I believe this practice of prepaying taxes probably goes against the Pennsylvania Constitution's uniformity of taxation clause as well. In summary, I hope council members will see this as an opportunity for themselves to contribute to positive changes that grow jobs in the city. I firmly believe that we can do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate your testimony. Drake, are you available?
I am.
All right, Drake. Good
afternoon.
Good afternoon. Just state your name again and then proceed with your testimony.
My name is Drake Nakishi, and I'm going to truncate a lot of what I was going to say because much of what I was going to say has already been said. But I just wanted to echo a couple of key items. Number one is, I have a scientific background. So there's a key axiom that I believe in is that for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. And I think other speakers have spoken about this, that if you take action, you need to think about how does this affect, the business community, good or bad. And I think in many cases, and I understand elected officials, by and large, you guys are pleasers. You want to help your constituents. You want to be able to deliver something to them. But I think it's important to maybe take a step back and kind of, hear from all sides. And so I especially appreciate having this opportunity to address this committee on this issue at this present time. Now, a lot of speakers have talked about the negative factors affecting small businesses in Philadelphia: increased taxes, lack of law enforcement. I'm not sure if anybody brought up the poor performing schools, but from the standpoint of legislation, and I've spoken about this, I think, on a previous panel with Councilman Green, is that there was a particular piece of legislation was an emergency family leave bill. And I think what I'd like to say is that there's probably no real reason for having this to go forward because the pandemic is almost over. Federal assistance with the American Rescue Plan Act, HR 1319, is beginning now. And anytime you put on further regulations or legislations on businesses, it puts a message of chill out there in the business community. Now, I'll flip to the positive side about what I think is the city has done well in moving forward and trying to change the perception of a business unfriendly environment. And I know that the Commerce Department is trying to use technology to reduce delays in permitting and licensing. They also have changed the bidding process and the RFP process to make it easier for business to participate. They've raised that threshold, and I think that will be of great benefit. The City Commerce Department is also encouraging certification to help business operate in a more efficient and cost-effective manner. And I think this will greatly help those that have small business that want to expand and be a larger business to understand how they go about doing that. What I was most struck about was that the City Commerce Department has announced that they were going to do Zoom sessions, one-on-one help on the first and fourth Monday of the month to help answer questions and provide guidance. I think this should be extended even past the pandemic. One thing about small businesses, they're usually, 1, 2, 3 people, and if you're running your business and trying to sweep the floor and stock the shelves or cook the meals, it's very difficult to stay on top of things. So it's important to have more or less an ombudsman at the city level or within some of the nonprofit groups.
He'll do it. All right. Well, you know what? I'm going to email him then.
Hello. The more we can do to kind of handhold the business owners to walk them through the process and to provide the technical assistance is going to be key. I also want to mention that the city has, through the Commerce Department, has funded the minority chambers, and I think we're all grateful for that. I'd like to make a suggestion that the minority chambers be brought into the redevelopment discussions earlier, especially on large projects. Okay, small businesses could develop coalitions to help provide possible tenants and equity. In many cases, these very large projects or developments, the city goes out to attract a very large developer, and they're taking large risk, but they also tend to garner the most benefit. While small businesses may have similar risk, but are left with less benefits. Also, I'd like to suggest that the city create the first-time homebuyers program. I believe it existed in the past. I'm not sure if it still exists, but you need to be able to have your employees, their workers, also to be able to afford a home in the city. And I think the first-time homebuyers program could be of assistance for that in helping with the down payment and the closing costs. In some municipalities, they actually do that, and it's a very successful program. And the last thing I'd like to say is that the city, I don't know if the city still has this, but they used to have a tax credit for those businesses that had security cameras. And if it continues to exist, then fine, we should expand. If not, we should rethink and relook at that, because businesses will benefit from lower cost of insurance. The city would have additional eyes and ears throughout the city, and the criminal investigations would improve. That said, thank you for the opportunity to comment today.
Thank you, Drake. Appreciate your testimony. Next up, we have Peter Watts. And Peter, if you could try to summarize. I know a lot of people are saying anything, but there's still 2 more panels to go, and a lot of people have been on for a while. But just state your name, Peter, and proceed with your testimony. All right, if Peter's not available, Troy Hayward. Troy? All right. How about Alex?
I'm
Alex
here.
Malone?
I'm here.
All right,
Can you
Alex.
hear me?
Yeah, we
Chairperson?
hear you. Yep.
Thanks. I'll be happy to summarize. Thank you for allowing me the time to testify today. My name is Alex Balloon, and I am the Executive Director of the Tacony Community Development Corporation. We are a volunteer-driven, neighborhood-based commercial corridor program in the Tacony neighborhood of Northeast Philadelphia. The Commerce Department is absolutely critical to the work we do. We are funded primarily by the Commerce Department, and this close partnership allows us to help more than 135 small businesses in our neighborhood. We need the Commerce Department because we need an advocate for small businesses embedded in city government to interface with other city departments. Often city departments aren't oriented towards how a small business would interface with a specific regulation or practice. This has been a challenge with some of the city's safer at home restrictions. And I want to commend the Commerce Department for leading the way to create more simplicity and flexibility for sidewalk dining, which was a lifeline for our city's food-based businesses. I wanted to say that with respect to regulation, we should also take a close look at city regulations with a low level of compliance. For example, the city's commercial recycling plan compliance rate was less than 20%. That requires businesses to file a renewal annually online, so I'm sure that it's even lower today. I have business owners with no computer or email address. So the question is, what exactly is the regulation achieving? And I support recycling, but sometimes we can take a look to see if there's a better way to get there. That being said, the Commerce Department has been an essential part of coordinating disaster relief programs and financial assistance to impacted businesses. This has included problem solving with the Office of Business Services and the Business Response Team. So in closing, we need the Commerce Department embedded in city government, and we need to grow wealth and employment in our city's neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Mark Colazzo? Are you still here?
I'm here.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilman. Always
Mark,
good to see you.
Say your name for the record, and then you can proceed. Thank you.
Absolutely. Mark Colazzo, Executive Director of the Fishtown, Kensington Area Business Improvement District. Good afternoon to the members of the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development, and thank you for allowing me to testify on Resolution 2001-090. As I stated, I'm Mark Colazzo, and I'm Executive Director of the Fishtown, Kensington Area BID. However, today I'm here to represent the Philadelphia BID Alliance. The Alliance was established in early 2020. We are an affiliation of 16 commercial corridors in Philadelphia who work together sharing resources and exchanging information. This collaborative effort has given us a unique view of the city's commerce, its strengths, and its weaknesses. The Department of Commerce has been an important partner in our effort. Their partnership has been particularly important during the difficult days of the pandemic, and we applaud their continued dedication to helping us. Without claiming to be alone in this, it has been a hard year for business. The vacancy rate has increased throughout all corridors, and the loss of employment is of grave concern. Our efforts are dedicated to protecting and promoting what we have and making our corridors appealing to new entrepreneurs. The work that we do and the aims we share require the city commitment to the same goals. The BID Alliance met with new Department of Commerce Director Michael Rashid in January. He listened to our concerns and gave us information on his plans for the department. We appreciated his input and the time he gave us. Commerce has really been our only way of regular engagement, both from us submitting proposals for consideration as well as Commerce advocating on our behalf. Our business people invest their time, talent, and treasure in opening and operating their businesses in the city of Philadelphia. We all take to heart their commitment to our city and continue to request more continued engagement so that their voices are continuously heard. One of the efforts that was crucial during the shutdown and civil unrest was the helpline email set up by the Office of Business Services. We particularly want to highlight the work done by the Department of Commerce and its employees, Dennis Murphy, Justine Bolkus, Karen Fegley, and Joshua Stratton-Rayner during this past historic year. Their levels of engagement and follow-through was also historic. Today, the Council has before it a resolution that includes goals that we support. This resolution includes good examples of the weaknesses in the city business interface, which has been exposed by the pandemic as an effort to correct them. The restaurant legislation, for which our restaurants are so very grateful, is just one instance in which Philadelphia's small businesses face seemingly insurmountable red tape to achieve ordinary tasks that are pro-jobs, pro-equity, and pro-growth. Prior to this legislation, in most parts of the city, restaurants seeking to put a table and chairs outside of their businesses required this body to pass legislation approving it, which is what made last year's bill so important to our business owners. Similarly, simple signage approvals can also be excessively burdensome. If you are a business owner, you may need a building permit, a zoning permit, and an electrical permit. If you are a commercial tenant, you may need to pay a design professional or an attorney to advocate on your behalf. You may have to pay a filing fee, a permit fee, a surcharge fee, a record retention fee, and an accelerated plan review fee. And after all that, you still may not get approved. Also on our wish list is access to data, which can be shared with our stakeholders and help them with their business decisions. To support our mission of clean and safe, we are asking for more fluid communication with the police and the streets department. We believe that the Department of Commerce is the correct place to house these initiatives because they have done the work of facilitating this much already. The Bid Alliance is ready and willing to work with council on how to reduce red tape to allow our businesses and our corridors to flourish. Thank you for allowing me to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Collazo. Appreciate your testimony, and we agree with how well Commerce has been able to really go above and beyond to reach out. But we also want to thank all our bids because our bids were able to reach a lot of businesses that made it easier for us to get that information disseminated out to them. So much appreciated. Let's call at panel 6, I guess, Steve Mullen. Is Steve available?
Yes, Councilman Squilla, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you well, Steve.
Hi. And maybe now see me on this. Hi to everyone here, and I appreciate the opportunity to not only hear the discussion here, but also to add maybe a couple of points here at this late stage.
Steve, looks like you have a finger or something over your camera there. There you go.
Oh. Sorry about that, everyone.
That's all right. Hey, that looks a lot better.
Yeah, sorry about that. But I do have, and I do appreciate the opportunity to speak today. My name is Stephen Mullen. I'm a principal with eConsult Solutions, Inc., and we do a lot of stuff with city economies and stuff here. So, and as I mentioned, we have heard a lot of good testimony and discussion and questions back and forth. I would like to offer 3 sort of quick comments or topics to urge council and the administration to keep in mind when looking at this, at the ease of business, and in particular in a time of recovery from the pandemic. The first is something that you've heard from various testifiers this morning here, and that is that small businesses, it's important to keep in mind that small businesses are driven by demand first, and then their costs to be competitive. But if they don't have demand, you can have the cheapest costs on the planet Earth, but if there's no demand, people actually buying your products or services here, then the costs are then the cost story is not as important. And a huge problem with the pandemic, as we've heard, and the recovery is restoring the growth in demand for the products and services of small businesses. My second point is that a city-urban economy is very interrelated. You really can't deal with one sector. Hey, let's talk about this region. Hey, let's talk about these type of business. Hey, let's talk about this here in a silo. You can't. You have to take into account the overall economy because each component of the business relies on all of the overall economy. Doesn't mean that you can't focus and try to help and make sure that the benefits are spread, but you can't do it solo. And so, and my third point tying in here is that small businesses, whatever the ownership, sell to either local markets or to all markets in the world, essentially the rest of the world outside of the city. And they sell to either final consumers, customers like us here, or to other businesses. And in Philadelphia, many of the small urban businesses that we deal with and are talking about deal and sell primarily to their local markets. So demand for what they sell is a function of two very important things. One is the income of the consumers, of the people who are going to be purchasing, going to be in their market here. And that income is a function of, ultimately, and the vast majority of it is a function of, do they have employment here? So overall employment is absolutely a prerequisite for small businesses owned by people of color, small businesses in any regard, and commercial corridors and stuff. The number one thing is they have to have customers who have money in their income in their pockets and money in their pockets here. We got a short blip, by the way, short and very important and sizable blip. Blip's probably too small a word, with the pandemic, with the rescue funds going directly to individuals. But that needs to be sustainable and sustainable through income. The second is what businesses, small businesses, are selling to other businesses in the city or in the metropolitan area here. And for that, they need those businesses to be doing well too. They go up sort of a business food chain here, and those businesses are the vast majority of the economy, of our $120 billion city economy. Vast majority of that is the private sector, but we do concentrate a lot on the government sector here. But I would very much recommend that we also talk about the business opportunities, and I shouldn't say also because we are, but it's very important to note that the business opportunities through the private sector, my guess is that they are 100 times bigger. That stream and that funds and those opportunities are 100 times bigger than the city. You still want to make sure that the city is playing an active part to assist, but the real getting on track is with the overall private economy. So with that, I will, Mr. Chair, I will answer questions or follow my fellow panelists. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you for your testimony. We appreciate that, and we always appreciate the help that you give council and the information and statistics to guide us on hopefully making good decisions along the way. There is a couple more people to testify. Right now we have Rose Emmett. If not Rose, Stephen Slavinsky.
Hello, how are you? This is Stephen Slavinsky. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, Stephen, go ahead if you want to. Just state your name for the record and then continue your testimony. If we have any questions at the end, we'll wait till everybody's done.
Sure, absolutely. My name is Stephen Slavinsky. I'm a senior research fellow at Arizona State University and also the project director of the Doing Business North America report, which you've heard referenced here a little bit today. And I'll be talking today about the results that we have from that study as they pertain to Philadelphia. Just a quick thing that might be interesting to the committee and to the council. I myself spent a lot of time in Philadelphia growing up. I'm a child of the 80s, grew up on the East Coast. My great-grandfather came through Ellis Island and settled in South Philly. My grandfather was born there. My great-uncle worked in the Nabisco factory on Roosevelt Boulevard back in the day. I used to drive down there as a child over the summers and roll down the windows. It was like we were driving by Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. You could smell the cookies being baked inside. And then finally, my other great-uncle was the last civilian commander of the Frankfurt Armory. His literal last day on the job was to turn off the lights and lock the doors on the way out of that building. So I've got a lot of deep roots in Philadelphia. So it's quite an honor to be able to chat with you today to talk about how we can make Philadelphia even better. And the way we can do that, I think, is to focus on some very specific attributes of the business, regulatory, and tax environment as it pertains in relationship to other competitor cities to see how Philadelphia can gain a competitive advantage in those areas. I'd like to go ahead and share my PowerPoint presentation with you. I'm going to pop it up right here. It worked when we tested it. I was going to ask maybe for a verbal confirmation of folks on the call to make sure that you can see it.
Confirm.
Okay, you can. All right, wonderful, wonderful. So here at Arizona State University, we've got this project called Doing Business North America. It's an annual project. We're entering its third year. And what we've done is we've cobbled together about a dozen researchers over the course of the past year, or at least starting in 2019 each year, to pretend we're a business and go through the regulatory process that would be required to start a business, operate a business, and if you lose money, then close down that business. But the reality is that these types of costs in terms of time and money vary considerably by city. And so what we wanted to do is gauge all of the attributes of these factors for businesses in a number of cities across North America, Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. In fact, 130 cities across those countries. And these are objective measures that are all based on publicly available data from typically the city websites themselves, or in cases where we had to call to confirm things. And the logic here was we tried to assume we were a small or medium-sized business, and we tried to gauge the rules that would apply to the broadest range of businesses possible. It doesn't mean that some businesses won't have an easier time going through these processes, but we wanted to focus on the small and medium-sized businesses in particular, because as has been referenced already, and I think is obvious when you look at the data, is that most small and medium-sized businesses are the ones that create over 70% of the jobs in most cities. And so these are really significant, or can be really significant, barriers to both starting and growing those businesses and creating that kind of employment and job growth. And in fact, looking at the empirical analysis that have been done both on the DB&A data set and other data sets that exist, you typically tend to see greater growth in both business starts and expansion of existing businesses for small and medium-sized businesses, basically maybe 500 or 50, rather, in our case, 50 people and below are the kind of businesses that we consider small to medium. You tend to see growth more actively in cities that have a lower, what we call ease, or rather a higher ease of doing business, or a lower barrier to entry, if you will. And how do we measure these things? Well, we have 6 categories that we look at. Starting a business, pretty self-explanatory. That's the number of steps it takes to actually start your business. Employing workers. This is a measure of how intrusive or less intrusive the city is in allowing people to, or businesses rather, to employ workers, to write flexible contracts, to hire contractors, things of this sort. Not all cities get involved in this process, but some cities do. Getting electricity is basically the affordability and reliability of electricity. May not seem like it varies much, but it does vary considerably by cities. Land and space use, this is a zoning metric for commercial property, but it also influences the length of time, or I should say it measures the length of time and the number of steps involved to do simple property transactions like transfer deeds or get approval for things to build or to sell on your property. Paying taxes, again, fairly self-explanatory. This gauges the level of taxation and also the type of taxation that exists in the city that might have a direct impact on both the creation of a business, but also the profitability of that business once it gets up and running. And finally, resolving insolvency. That's basically bankruptcy. This is the only category that actually is entirely national or federal in nature. This is basically federal bankruptcy law. U.S. Bankruptcy law is actually better than Canada and Mexico, and so all U.S. cities rank first in this category. But not all cities rank first in all these other categories. And the unfortunate aspect of this is that Philadelphia ranks rather poorly in many of these categories. They rank very well in getting electricity, 16th in the nation. So at least Philadelphia doesn't have to worry too much about that, at least based on what we could measure. But there are 3 specific categories I think are worth mentioning, and I'll just spend the rest of my time here just briefly going through these 3 categories, what they mean, and how Philadelphia rank in comparison to other cities. First, they're starting a business. This is basically the number of procedures, and it costs, or rather, the number of procedures to start a business, and then the time and cost necessary to complete these procedures. Philadelphia ranks 75th overall in this category. Now, to put that in context, we had 80 U.S. cities that we were measuring, and so Philadelphia ranks fairly low In fact, fifth from the bottom, really, in this specific measure. That's largely because, by our estimate, again, we had our dozen researchers pretending like they were a business going through the business start process. By our measure and our estimate, it would take about 10 days to go through all of the processes that were involved in starting a business. It's actually, that's about twice what most major East Coast cities and certainly most of your competitor cities were doing in terms of time and expediting procedures. So it takes quite a while to actually just start a business in Philadelphia. Now let's go to space and use. This is a zoning measure, but it's also counting the procedures and the number of days and the amount of time and cost it takes to start, to get through the land and zoning process. Philadelphia ranks 89th in this category. And that might seem like a head scratcher because we said we only have 80 cities in the U.S. Well, we have cities in Canada and New Mexico as well, in Mexico as well. In fact, Canadian cities ranked a few of them ranked above Philadelphia in this specific case. Basically, the take-home message on this one is that there are about double as many steps in Philadelphia to get through the zoning and through the transfer of property process as there is in other major cities of comparable size and certainly of most of the competitor cities. And finally, I want to end with paying taxes. It's been mentioned already. This is effectively the type and the rate at which income and business activity is taxed in both the state, but also mainly the city level as well. What's significant here is that Philadelphia, of course, it ranks 83rd again, outside of the 80 cities in the U.S., because there's a couple of Canadian cities that do a little better than Philadelphia. But the main reason for Philadelphia's low score in this is the fact that there are a number of city-level taxes that are actually quite punitive and unique in an unfortunate way. In fact, there's only about a dozen cities that tax either receipts, meaning like a gross receipts type tax, or tax income at the city level. But there's only one city that taxes both. That's Philadelphia. And that's the main reason why Philadelphia ranks so poorly relative to other cities that we measured. One of the best things we love about this study is that it is available for download by anyone at dbna.asu.edu. You can filter by city, by country, by state. You can compare yourself, see where we got all the data, and you can download all the spreadsheets and make your own comparisons and also open it up to researchers to make sure that the types of things we're measuring are correlating with real world economic outcomes. And so we're really excited to be going into year 3. The 3rd edition will be coming out in October of this year. The first 2 editions have already been out and they're available on that website. I'm happy to take any questions now, but if you have any additional questions after we finish this meeting, you can go to economicliberty@asu.edu and send some email, and I'm always making sure I answer those emails as soon as I can. So thank you for your time. It's been quite an honor. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your testimony. Much appreciated. We do have, is there Paul Burnett?
With Alan Hoffman.
And if not Paul,
and with Bill Wilson from over at PRWC, and also with the Urban.
How about Mason Hunt?
And then I will go back to you.
Is there anyone else here that'd like to testify?
None at this time. One other thing, I'm looking at the.
I don't see anyone else here to testify. Is there any questions or comments from anybody on the committee?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Councilman.
Yeah, this is actually a question for Mr. Mullen. I know Steve, who has been a consultant and, through eConsult advised a number of, entities through the city of Philadelphia, and also his past experience both as a Commerce Director here in the city of Philadelphia and St. Louis. I want to get his perspective on the resources that will be coming to the city of Philadelphia from the American Rescue Plan. And considering this topic and the earlier questions that have been asked, I'm curious on how he would think dollars under the American Rescue Plan that will be coming to Philadelphia should be best used to address this issue of growing the economic climate and helping businesses in the city of Philadelphia.
Hi, Councilman. That's a nice question here that's on everybody's mind, obviously. I would note, based on the conversations earlier in the panel, that number one thing that I think is important to think about is I've always considered the rescue plan, these things here, to be basically safety nets. These are not long-term. We in the whole economy fell, or big chunks of the economy fell off the bike. To get back on the bike, we needed a big chunk of dough as a safety net. This is not a permanent thing. So the concentration of thinking about, okay, how do we use this, not just to say, hey, let's just get back and say we can set the rewind to February 2020 and we'll continue on like we were before because we've gotten back up here. It's not that at all. So an opportunity to use this, one, to fill some of the gaps, but really to not let up on the gas pedal at all for growing the overall economy. Every single one of the things that we're trying to do now, which is a broader set of things than we talked about with equitable development, inclusion, and essentially spreading the benefits of growth more than they've been in the past, all require continued growth in one way, shape, or form. So to the extent that some of the city's budget here, which says here are our priorities, we're going to do something here. To the extent that the city's budget can also have a sizable, and earlier Commerce Director Rashid mentioned, he's at the table to make sure, as you look at the big picture here, there's got to be something about investing. We've used the term invest a lot, but invest in the productive capacity of the city going forward, which will help address. It's a necessary, but it's not a sufficient condition. That's the old trickle-down story was this is necessary and sufficient, but it is a necessary condition to make sure that the economy grows back. Sorry. I think you might be on mute now, Councilman.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that information because I think that's definitely the perspective that we need to take of not only addressing but also investing. Mm-hmm. And I think too often we don't think forward. We think right now, and we don't use the resources and assets that we have to be forward thinking. And I think we do that at our detriment and not being prospective. And I think using this opportunity to do that, to make an investment, we do it in other areas, but for some reason we don't tend to do that in economic development, which if we did, that would put us in a better position financially because we would have more growth in our city, more successful businesses, which would ultimately reduce the poverty in the city of Philadelphia. So thank you for your response to that question.
Thank you for the question. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Dom, you have a question?
And I can run you through, we're going to give you an advanced look of our CDR presentation.
Can you hear me, Steve?
I can now. Thank you.
And first of all, thank you, Councilman Green, for this resolution today. And I wanted to follow up with Councilman Green's questions. And maybe you could be a little more specific. And let's just make believe for a minute that you're back in the city government. And we say to you, Steve, what's the three best things we could do with this money? Give me three specific things.
Essentially, the investments that I was talking about with Councilman Green there. I do think that some heavy duty regulatory reform or compensation for adding costs on regulations that have good benefits for in terms of value, but some sort of compensation on the side so that it isn't just, hey, here's my opportunity. I can be in the city and do something that's good, or I can be outside of the city and I can say I love doing good stuff here, but I get a big hit to my or big increase on my profits there. So the regulatory burdens in recognizing those and maybe having some type of compensation would be one. Second is some type of some type of reduction long-term and business taxes here. I was in the first class sitting around the table back in the 1990s looking at the wage tax reductions there. And a lot of people don't realize that it was originally a 5-year program, whacking 0.1% every year, not 400 millionths of 1% each year, but a 10%. The second year went 496 to 486. It was supposed to go down to 446 here. The second year it went from 486 to 484. And like, hey, what the heck happened? And it turned out, hey, we thought the budget director said we couldn't afford going all the way. So I said, okay, the thing is derailed on a number one. And if that's what you're looking for, when's the time when you have a lot of money so you can make a tax rate reduction or something like that? That time will never come here. So you have to do it and build it in up front. And I know the members of council, including the two I'm looking at here now, have sort of been pointing that out. And I think there was when Commerce Director Rashid said, "Want to be at the table." It's not like here. What's this department going to get? What's this department's going to get? What's this department going to get? And what's the Commerce Department going to get? And what's this program going to get? No, it isn't. It's a more strategic. It's sort of like current operating expenditures versus capital. It's not just here, oh, by the way, we have an extra $30 this year we haven't put into the general fund, or we haven't budgeted for the general fund, so let's use this for capital. No, say, we need this capital investment. By the way, I do consider that, from my earlier answer, I do consider capital investment to be a huge infrastructure investment, to be a huge part of that overall investment we were talking about. I was talking about with Councilman Green just before that. So tax rate reductions, increased investment, and regulatory. If you're looking at regulatory changes, again, for good reason, then have some sort of a compensation. Back in the late 90s, most of you were young at that time. Maybe I was too. But there was a big thing about unfunded mandates. Federal government comes in and says, "Here, you got to do this, 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 and this," and say, "Whoa! When we do this, it's going to cost us. We understand what you're saying, but holy crow, it's going to cost us." Tax rates here. As everybody knows, there's been different, hey, maybe we'll go and add on to another tax. There were people saying, why don't we bond out of that for 5 years or something like that? But fundamentally, I think there's an opportunity here with the CARES Act. And if we get the economy back up running, and so it catches up and hopefully continues on, and that's a big if, I think that you'd find it in the growth.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Director Rashid, do you want to add to that?
No, that was great. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you both.
Good answer.
Yeah, I'm going to have to jump off, Councilman. I have to go to another meeting if that's okay.
All right. Yeah, right. I know Derek Green had one quick thing, but I think that's fine. Derek, do you have it?
I have a question for Steve, but
all right.
Commerce Director Rashid, you become quickly adept at this process by I follow that question. So
all right, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. See ya.
Go ahead, Derek, council member.
Yeah, so I just want to thank all of the witnesses that were here for this hearing. I think this was a very engaged conversation, some of that very timely, considering the things that we're dealing with in reference to how do we grow the business climate in the city of Philadelphia. It's very important because we've got to grow new revenue in our city, and we've got to do that by taking real decisive action going forward. I think we're familiar with all the issues that need to be addressed in reference to one, better marketing the city of Philadelphia to companies, not only in the region, but around the nation, around the world. When you think that the city of Philadelphia has the third most walkable downtown behind New York and Chicago, we're close to 40% of the population of the nation within a 2-hour plane, train, or car ride. We have a downtown and also a city that has various diverse neighborhoods and small businesses and commercial corridors. We also have, I would say, better than Boston in reference to the number of colleges and universities in our greater Philadelphia region. So we have a lot of things to boast about. We have to do a better job of telling our story. We also have to spend dollars in ways to help grow businesses in the city of Philadelphia and also make it easier for businesses to cut through the red tape and the regulations that we have. And I think there's a commitment by the Commerce Department to address that, as well as we'll see in the budget process starting on April 15th, an investment of those dollars. But the last point is the issue of taxes. And Councilmember Dom started to talk about some of the issues that I wanted to talk about briefly, because I know we've been here for some time. But a historical challenge has been, how do we reduce the BERT and or wage tax, and how do you make up that revenue? So if you reduce one, you got to make it up with something else. Now, if we are growing as a city, we have more revenue coming to the city, that's an easier proposition. But ultimately, if you're going to reduce wage or BERT, you're taking that from somewhere else. And that's been one of the challenges. And when you look at other cities around the nation, cities that have not been as financially impacted by the pandemic, cities like Boston, where 80% of their revenue comes from real estate, and there's been a conversation for years about how do we make that shift in real estate. But that's a challenge, because you're talking about a possible increase in real estate taxes, and that's something that people have some real concerns about, especially when we have a 25% poverty rate. I know, Steve, you have been involved in conversations years ago, both with Jerry Sweeney and Paul Levy, in reference to trying to make that change of having those who own commercial property to pay more in taxes as a way of reduction on some of the business taxes. I think we need to reduce both the BERT and wage tax. But one of the things that we saw in this pandemic is that for those that have traditionally worked in the city are now working from home. And so the non-resident wage tax went down very dramatically, and that had a very significant impact on our $750 million deficit last year and the $450 million deficit for FY22. So recently I've been having some conversations and going back to a conversation that I had some years ago when actually I had some hair regarding the land value tax. And we'll be reaching out to you regarding that topic. And we'll be having hearings on that issue somewhat soon about, is this an opportunity to have a conversation of with the increase in value in real estate, and we've seen some pretty significant increases in real estate over the past year in spite of a pandemic. And is there a way of capturing that growth as a way of offsetting, and maybe easier to offset the wage than BERT, although we also need to reduce the BERT taxes, and using that as a way of starting that conversation of that transfer in a way that's not going to impact those who are moderate and low income. If we structure the land value tax in a way that captures more value on the land side, and the city's kind of done that already in reference to the tax abatement where they've increased the assessment on land. So they've already started the conversation. So we're going to continue that conversation, but that may be one possibility of starting to shift from the wage and BERT to more on the real estate, using the land value tax as a vehicle, similar to the Sweeney-Levy plan, but doing it within our house and not going to the General Assembly. So I'm curious on just your initial thoughts, and we'll have some additional conversations going forward.
Well, I've been a huge fan of the land value tax for years. When I came here from St. Louis, it was not allowed in Missouri, and I said, "Oh, I'm going to Pennsylvania where they do allow it here," and taking a look. And also, it's not sort of the theoretical all land as opposed to more heavily weighting the land. There's ways that you can do stuff so it's not an all or nothing here, which I think is important. I will tell one story. My last day as finance director in Philadelphia, the next day I became the commerce director. I had lunch with the mayor and David Cohen and Ben Haler, the new finance director, and from Pittsburgh, who had used the land value tax. And the last thing on the 450 item agenda that we had for its 8-hour lunch was, I said, I've been, want to take a look at what's the possibility of looking at, the land value tax, and do we have the capacity and the with our assessment practices to get those numbers? Because as we all know, up until 7 or 8 years ago, sort of like it was hit or miss, and mostly miss here in this world. So could you do that? I won't tell you what Ben Haler's reaction was to that, but you'll note that was not much on the agenda for the second half of the 1990s on here on that front. So I think that and implementing it, I do think that we're in a completely different world now than we were a decade or 2 decades ago, or 3 decades ago. Sorry, here. Thanks. Now I'm going to go out and get on the bus for free, but I can't do that because I want to help SEPTA, so I still want to pay my fare. But the issue now with growth is something. Remember, in decline with no good records, what the heck are you really talking about? And the answer was he really couldn't. Now with growth, and by the way, even with some, maybe it starts at a lower level and takes a while to grow back up. But with growth, and with the capacity that we have now for assessments here, I think it's like a chef TV show. All the ingredients for making a good soup are sitting right there. So I think it's a really good way to look at that. What's the transition that we talk about and other things like that?
Well, actually, it wasn't 3 decades ago. It was actually 4 decades. The first person to talk about this was, if I remember correctly from my research, was Joan Spector and Jim Tyune, who first started talking about land value tax. They actually had a bill that was introduced. Then also Jonathan Seidel had talked about this, and then former council members Wilson Good and Blano Reynolds Brown. But I agree with you. We have not had the right tools to get it done. I think Actual Value Initiative helped in that regard. And also the fact that we did not have CAMA, which is now, and that's something I've been very critical about in reference to administration, but that's also in a different place. So I think we may be at a time when that conversation may be a little more ripe for the possibility. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And again, I know you can't see me well with the screen, but I do. This is something that we need to continue to talk about. And Steve, we appreciate all the numbers and data that you give us, and Commerce and Commissioner Rashid has done a great job, and his staff that are always there when we call and reach out to our businesses that have struggled through this. So thank you for your time, and that we have no other people here to testify, no other questions. I want to thank all the panels and the witnesses for participation. We value your opinions, and knowing that we'll continue this conversation in the future. This will conclude the business before the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development today. So thank you all very much for your attendance and attention. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.